Selkens. He was last seen a week after she disappeared. And senior Lib Dems have criticised their coalition partners in the Sunday papers. The Treasury Secretary, Danny Alexander, accuses the Conservatives of taking credit for Lib Dem policies. The Business Secretary, Vince Cable, says Tory plans to freeze benefits are unacceptable.
5 Live Formula One.
The Japanese Grand Prix.
The rain falls down here in Suzuka, 53 laps await, but I can tell you the situation is deteriorating. This race will start under safety car conditions. There are as many umbrellas as they can be, trying to keep the drivers safe and dry at the moment. And Allan McNish, very difficult for a driver in this and the teams in this condition.
Tremendously treacherous conditions right now from the team's point of view. You know, clearly they've made one tyre choice, which is go to the full wets, and that's the only one they could have made. From the drivers, they're going to be on tippy toes all the way around here. Arms are going to be very tensed on the steering wheel, but they have to be so delicate because it's a deluge out there right now.
It really is. So the national anthem here, which has just been played out, is called Kimi Go Yo. I don't know if that's a sign for Kimi Räikkönen, but that means may your reign last forever. I don't think when they wrote it they meant this kind of rain. So we are standing by for the race, and to talk us through it, we've already heard from Allan McNish, and our commentator for today is Jack Nicholls.
Thank you very much, Jenny. An absolute deluge coming down here in Suzuka. We're about a 4-hour drive south of Tokyo. I imagine it'd be a lot longer, actually, in these conditions. A historic race circuit that has featured many, many entertaining Grand Prix, many controversial Grand Prix over the years as well. And today could be another in that edition. Every weekend so far this season we've got a driver to give us some music as we talk you through the grid, and this weekend it seemed appropriate that it would be local man Kamui Kobayashi.
Hi, my name is Kamui Kobayashi from K-Town F1 team. One of the favorite music is called Slapper from Landa Bros. Why would you like? Because just I like Slapper.
At the back of the grid will be the Lotus of Pastor Maldonado. He had to take a 10-place grid penalty for using a new engine. Alongside him, in 21st place, will be Britain Max Chilton.
And on the 10th row, the good Jean-Eric Vernon, the Toro Rosso, with the grid penalty as well. And home hero, Kamui Kobayashi.
18th place on the grid will be Jules Bianchi in the Marussia, just behind Marcus Ericsson, who had his best qualifying performance of the season so far.
And 16th, it's Romain Grosjean, the Lotus, and Esteban Gutierrez alongside him in 15th.
Esteban Gutierrez's teammate Sutil will start in 14th place for Sauber, with on 13th position Nico Hülkenberg.
And on the 6th row of the grid, we've got Daniel Kvyat, the new 2015 Red Bull driver. Alongside him, Sergio Perez in the Force India.
Into the top 10, and Kimi Räikkönen will start there, just behind Sebastian Vettel in 9th.
And just in front, you've got an all-McLaren 4th row of the grid with Jenson Button and Kevin Magnussen.
Daniel Ricciardo and Fernando Alonso will start in 6th and 5th positions, respectively.
And a very strong Williams pairing on the 2nd row of the grid, Felipe Massa with Valtteri Bottas. I think they could be looking to take an opportunistic victory here this weekend.
But on the front row, as ever, it's the Mercedes. 2nd place for Lewis Hamilton, the pole man Nico Rosberg.
Always hoping that we have a good battle, and it could be even more spectacular maybe if it's wet, who knows.
Nico did a great job, so I'll push hard to make sure that I bring some more with me.
Yeah.
The cars pull away then as we go racing, sort of, here in Suzuka. The rain is coming down hard. The race has begun behind the safety car, and now the cars will follow the Mercedes around. Well, it's a top 3 for Mercedes at the moment. It's the Mercedes safety car leading the way, and they will do as many laps as required to try and clear some of the standing water, to try and make the track a little bit drier and easier to race on before we go properly racing here in Japan. 53 laps coming up, or 2 hours, whichever expires first. But Allan McNish, our Formula One summariser, the rain is teeming down.
It is, and also there's huge puddles and lakes on this Suzuka circuit. The drivers are just cruising around behind. Here's Hamilton.
So it is much wetter than before, Lewis, much wetter than you had before. It's been raining heavily while you've been on the grid. Be very careful.
Safety car needs to go faster.
Safety car needs to go faster. I think that's a clear indication where Lewis Hamilton's mindset is right now. Forward, not thinking about behind. And it is a very, very difficult situation right now, because you've got to try to keep heat into those tyres and into the brakes, because even though they're wet tyres, if they cool down, then they just feel solid and you don't have any grip at all.
Absolutely. So we are getting a good chance to have a little guide around this Suzuka circuit. Been used since 1987 in Formula One, and it is really a driver's circuit. Alan, well, let's hear from Vettel first.
Yeah, I'm aquaplaning. Going 80 kph, I'm aquaplaning.
50 miles per hour, and Sebastian Vettel says he's aquaplaning his Red Bull. Also, just seeing it on the onboard camera, he couldn't see a thing because of the spray as well. You know, Lewis Hamilton was in a privileged position. He has only got one car in front of him, being Nico Rosberg. If you're further back and Vettel is on the fifth row of the grid, then you've just got a wall of spray.
And why is Lewis Hamilton asking the safety car to go quicker?
He needs to try to keep those temperatures into the brakes. He needs to try to keep them into the tyres. And if you go slowly, then you can't. You just lose all of that feeling. And you don't also understand where the circuit is. But there's a very difficult thing. The race director's got to think of the whole grid, not just the people at the front, and they will be listening to all of the comments of the drivers as they're radioing into their teams, because now we're on lap 1 of 53. The race has effectively already started behind the safety car, and so from that point of view, we're now in a situation where we will follow the safety car until the drivers and Charlie Whiting deem that it is safe. But looking at them as they come down in front of us now, it's just incredible amount of water that's being kicked up.
Yep, the cars drive past us as we look over the pit lane, and the plumes of spray coming up from the back of the cars. These cars can dispense 65 litres of water a second with the amount of water that they churn out from underneath them, both using mainly through the grooved tyres that spits the water out up into the air. And it really is pretty spectacular to see Formula One cars in the wet conditions, but treacherous as well. And we've got someone off at the final corner, and it's Marcus Ericsson. The Caterham driver has spun coming out of the chicane. It was his best qualifying performance of the season so far, but he's ended up not quite in the gravel trap coming out of the final corner. He hasn't hit anything, but that shows you just how treacherous these conditions are, Alan.
Yeah, it's treacherous coming out there in the dry. We saw Daniel Ricciardo looping the car in practice around there. Now, so we see that Ericsson, he just came out changing up probably first to second gear. Immediately the car snapped around him. There's very little he could do at that point. I'm pretty sure he just aquaplaned on a river that was coming around there. He's got the nose of the car into the gravel. The rear of the car is actually just on the edge of the circuit. The marshals are now running down to try to see what they can do. But again, it just proves, as we're now in lap 2, how difficult it is out there.
Of course, once we get to the end of this lap, under safety car conditions, if they were to stop the race at any point, even behind the safety car, then it would be classified a half-point race. Marcus Ericsson has got going again, so we could do 2 laps here, and we could be awarding half points in theory, but I think we'll give it a little bit longer, no doubt about that, as we try and wait for the rain, because the rain has now subsided. It's much, much less hard.
Nico doesn't do any dramatic stops because I can't see him. So Lewis is saying the conditions are so poor he can't see you.
Well, it is still raining pretty hard there, Jack. You know, looking out, I see a river that's floating down the start and finish straight. There's quite an elevation change from the final corner where Ericsson has just spun, and the loop into turn 1. And there's one factor of the fact that, you know, there's a red flag now. There is a red flag. And Jenny, down to you.
Red flag coming out. I was just speaking to Paul Hembry. He said this race wouldn't go ahead. It was just too dangerous. Paul, you were saying to me just now, if it was up to you, he's the boss of Pirelli, the people that supply the tyres, you would call this off, and that's exactly what they've done.
Well, yeah, the visibility we saw, we're looking down the pit lane at the moment. We can see very well. As soon as the car started passing, it just was, just grey, looked like fog and mist. You just couldn't see anything. So I imagine for aquaplaning where standing water is, but also where the visibility is concerned, it was just too much.
All right, thank you very much, Paul Hembry. So explain, guys, what happens now.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jenny. Well, interestingly, the cars will now come around and stop on the grid again at the end of this lap, but we're currently on the second lap. At the moment, we have not completed the first lap, because the cars are coming now. Actually, the cars are coming into the pit lane, which wasn't what we were expecting at the time being. So it's all very interesting here in Suzuka. But we have only completed one lap. We're on lap 2 of the 53, and as far as I'm aware, we need the 2 laps to be completed. They have just crossed the line now to complete 2 laps, but under red flag conditions.
Yeah, so now basically we are in a position that the cars will all come down, they will all stop, the mechanics can go to them, there can be repairs if necessary, but I don't think anybody needs that right now. And then what they will do is they will wait to see if the weather conditions lighten up a little bit. They're expecting that the rain will actually reduce, but whether it's enough to allow a race, we'll have to wait and see in that particular point. Right now, as we stand, if there is no race, then they will have points, because they are between lap 2 and 75% race distance, which is lap 40. And so now, as we have officially finished 2 laps of the race, then that is a possibility.
Allan, I just wanted to ask you a question. Sorry, it's all chaos down here as people run to and from the cars. Were we expecting the cars to line up in the pit lane? Because the red flags have passed. They've normally lined up on the grid, and then the marquees come out. They can come into the pit lane, but everybody's come into the pit lane.
Well, to be honest, in the regulations it states that you are meant to come onto the grid, but the safety car came into the pit lane and everybody followed, so I assume that there has been a dictate because of the conditions and the ease of the mechanics and engineers being able to get to their cars in such treacherous weather, that everybody lines up in the pit lane. If there's a penalty for one, there's a penalty for 22 by this situation.
So everybody basically get 10-second stop and go penalty, raining it obsolete. I can paint a picture for you at the moment. There is a snaking line of Formula 1 cars. They're all stopped now. The engineers, the mechanics are rushing around furiously. They all have these gazebos that you'd have at a barbecue or a party, and they are rushing to get those out on top of the cars. At the moment, there are umbrellas over most of the drivers. They've all been elevated, picked up. The tyres are just about to have the warmers put round them, I believe. And as you can hear, there are just trolleys, mechanics, engineers running past me to get to their car.
Jenny, the thing I think to find out now is that there seems to be a little bit of confusion, especially on social media, which you can get in touch with us actually using the hashtag BBC F1. Which might come in useful actually over the next 2 hours if we haven't got much to do. But there seems to be confusion as to whether 2 laps have been completed. As far as I'm concerned, the red flag came out halfway around the second lap, so we did not complete 2 laps, but they also have completed the second lap as they've come into the pit, so there seems to be a lot of confusion about that, so that's something to hunt out for, I think.
I love it when you give me an impossible task. I would like to go to Charlie Whiting very much, who's the man in charge of race direction, and ask him exactly where we stand with regards to whether it has had 2 laps completed. For my guess, I'm thinking, well, they haven't actually managed to go over the start-finish line, so maybe that's an indication, but I will try and find out for you.
But Jenny, if you come into the pits, then you already have activated another lap. So, for example, you get scored if you come in for a pit stop, and so from that point of view, the 2 laps have been completed, in my opinion.
Well, I would say because the red flag came out after 1.5 laps, we haven't completed 2 laps in green flag conditions. But we've
had no race. We're behind the safety car, so it wasn't green flag anyway, Jack. The fact is we've clicked up 3 laps on the screen, so I reckon we are in that situation. But anyway, we're in the pit lane now, and we're waiting to see what happens with the skies and what happens with this typhoon, whether it's going to come and drop a little bit more water. The marshals in the last corner where Marcus Ericsson and the Caterham went off are scrubbing all the gravel off the circuit, and also the puddle. You can see them with the big brushes. They're just sweeping water off a river, a lake that's getting pushed into the side now.
A lot of the drivers now out of their cars. I'm stood by the Lotus garage actually, so Pastor Maldonado, the first man to come in, and he's gone into the garage still with his helmet on. Next up, Romain Grosjean, he's coming into the garage as well, just asking to be unplugged, and he's looking at everybody and trying to explain just how bad the weather conditions were out there. The helmet and hands device that he wears to keep himself safe are taken off, and he chats to his race engineer, and conditions out there, he's saying, pretty bad at the moment, and there's lots of people running around willy-nilly trying to work out exactly what to do, which drivers want to stay with their cars, which want to seek refuge, and most of them at the moment seeking refuge.
I think we might have an answer to this red flag issue, Jenny, and the pit lane incident at the same time. And Allan is spot on. By coming into the pits and stopping at the end of the pit lane, it means that 2 laps have been completed and the result can be declared. If they had stopped on the grid, which we were all expecting them to do under red flag conditions, that would have meant 2 laps hadn't have been completed.
There we go. Now we know. That's perfect. The explanation is there. So I'm assuming that everybody got around those laps in the right place, or in the place they started, apart from Ericsson, who did start this race in 17th position. So it means everybody that was behind him gets shuffled up 1 place on the grid. But as it stands then, if it ends like this, Rosberg would be declared the winner with half points. Hamilton would be second, again, half points to everybody, with Bottas, Massa, Alonso, Ricciardo, Magnussen, Button, Vettel and Raikkonen closing out the top 10.
So it's going to be a very, very interesting wait here in Suzuka, because we are going to wait to see whether the conditions dry up. And we were due to have heavy rainfall just before the start of the race, which we did have, but if it eases up in the next, half an hour or so, maybe there's a chance we can get this race back underway, because ultimately everyone wants to go racing here.
Yeah, they certainly do. There's no question about it. We're sitting in a position where we have came here for a race. There is also a title battle that's up for grabs. There's people here that could see this weather coming and thought it was maybe their opportunity to try and grab something from Mercedes. One of them is, I think, Fernando Alonso. He'd look to the skies this morning and think, yep, this is an opportunity for me. Not just purely because the Ferrari could be more competitive in the wet, but also because there's potential, and a very high potential for mistakes in these tricky conditions. Another one, though, that said he was looking to have a good race in the wet was Daniel Ricciardo. He said he set the car up for that. The only way I can think of that is if he increased the ride height, the distance of the car to the ground, to try to help it if there was aquaplaning situations. But Ricciardo felt that he was in good shape.
Alan, I'm going to interrupt you. Romain Grosjean's just in front of him. Romain, what were the conditions like out there?
It was almost undrivable. A lot of aquaplaning. Almost went out a few times, just being in third gear and trying to stay on the track. Couldn't see anything in a straight line, so yeah, it was too much.
2 laps have gone, that's officially declared, so if it doesn't get going again, the race would end like this. But what's your understanding of the situation?
I think there's a little bit less rain coming for the next few minutes, so hopefully we can race.
All right, I'll let you go off. He's just trying to keep himself a little bit dry. Romain Grosjean for the Lotus team, not having the best of seasons at the moment, but looking to try and improve here. But as things stand, he would only finish this race in 15th position. But he says, he calls it absolutely right. I've just come out to the back of the stands, and it's pretty much dry now out here. Well, it's not raining, it's not dry underfoot, obviously, but it isn't raining at the moment.
Alan, how do you keep, as a driver, your focus in these conditions when a red flag comes out?
That's a very tricky thing, Jack, to be honest with you, because you're all hyped up and you're tensed up and you're in that zone, and then suddenly you've got to deflate yourself in a way to conserve your energy. And I always jumped out the car straight away, got into the pit box away from everybody else, and I knew exactly what was going on because I would have a radio headset there in case I was needed quickly. But just then to try to sort of pull myself back from that edge that you need to have as you start a race, and then suddenly 1 minute later you've got to pick it up again.
A 10-minute warning, is that correct?
That is correct, Nico. You get at least a 10-minute warning.
Yeah, that's Nico Rosberg asking that exact question, because you do have a 10-minute warning just to get yourself back in the zone. The other thing I would do was I would make entirely sure I was as late as possible in the car, because you don't want to be sitting there and just getting wet, or alternatively getting cold as well. It's not cold right now, the temperatures are actually still pretty warm here, but when it's sometimes pretty cold outside, then you just sit in the car and shiver.
There's been a lot of talk about this typhoon. We covered it in the preview show but on Thursday night. There were suggestions of moving the race earlier today to avoid conditions like this. We had a support race at 11 o'clock, some little Japanese single-seaters. Had F1 race then, we probably could have got the race away, but the sort of promoters of the race here didn't want to move the time. They wanted to keep it here. This is when all the TV times are scheduled, the radio times are scheduled. Should we have run this race earlier?
I think we have to wait and see whether we can run it again first before actually asking that particular question. The race will be resumed at 15:25 local time, so in 11 minutes we will have the race again, in 10 minutes actually, and so that's fantastic news that they've decided to restart the race. And so Nico Rosberg has his 10-minute window. He knows he's going to be prepared for a restart.
It's 7:15 back in the UK, so a very good morning to you. We are out here in Japan for BBC Radio 5 Live Formula 1, and at the moment we have had 2 laps of racing, and then the red flag has come out. It was 2 laps behind the safety car, in fact. If the red flag stays here, then we can declare the race and everyone will get half points for this race, but hopefully we're going to be getting the race back underway because, Jennie Gow, are the conditions improving?
I just want to... Adrian Suter's just in front of me, but he doesn't know that the race is going to restart in 10 minutes. So I just want to tell him, Adrian, the race is going to start in 10 minutes. You probably want to go. That's okay. He didn't know that the race was going to start because he didn't have his headphones on, but he does have an apple in his hand and a banana in his hand, and he needs to get going because he doesn't know about the restart. So the same thing has happened for Esteban Gutierrez, who has 10 minutes to go for a comfort break and then get back. How are drivers so relaxed in this scenario? It's incredible. They don't look stressed at all. They don't look phased at all.
Well, there's very little you can do about it. You've just got to wait. You know, it's not that tricky to drive behind the safety car. You've just got to try and keep it on the track, as long as you don't have the really, really heavy rain. The problem was that the cars would struggle to see if you were at the back. When you're sitting in the pit lane, Jenny, it's basically okay. But right now, you've got to get focused. You've got to start preparing, because it's very possible that this could be... It'll be a start behind the safety car again, but the safety car could, in theory, come in after lap 1.
And the interesting thing, Alan, why wouldn't they leave the safety car out when they red flagged it? Because cars going round is going to disperse more water than cars sitting in the pit lane.
Yeah, but the problem is that it's the guys in the middle and the back of the grid. If they cannot see, if you know, Lewis Hamilton said, and he was right behind Nico Rosberg, who's on pole position, tell Nico not to check up, not to brake hard, because I can't see, I'll drive into the back of him. Think if you're like 12th or 14th or 16th, then it's very, very easy to hit someone without even knowing that they're there.
Alan, I want to come in here because there's just been a little bit of a kerfuffle. Pastor Maldonado and Jenson Button had both taken a break. They equally weren't wearing their headphones, so all of a sudden they decided, oh, we need to actually be back in the car, we better run. So they made a run for it right past us, and they're now going in the direction of their cars, which is good news for them.
Yeah, it is. Tell you what, that's why I always had a radio headset with me as soon as I got out of the car, because you just never know. These situations can change so quickly, and you've got to be prepared all the time, as much as you're trying to relax and save a little bit of energy. But now the drivers are getting in, they're getting belted in for the second time. Romain Grosjean is he's now being strapped in down in front of me in the pit lane, and so it's getting to that point now with 7 minutes to go, as Lewis Hamilton is also just getting his feet dry, because he's been outside of the car, so his feet are wet, and you want to dry those off with a rag, not really so much a tissue, but more with a rag, and then you can get into the car and you'll be okay.
Just going to interrupt you rudely again, because Matteo Bondiaci is next to me. He's the press officer and communications manager. What's Charlie Whiting been saying to you, Matteo, and what can we expect over the next couple of hours?
Well, in the next couple of hours, unfortunately, it's a little bit too long. Today is a very special day, but now we know that rain is gonna be lighter and lighter and lighter till stop. I think that we should have a sort of 40 minutes of almost no rain at all. And then I'm afraid I think that we should have more rain and with a different intensity. That's the real news from the satellite, from our WebMat system.
Matteo, a lot of people are saying, why wasn't the race brought forward? Is there any suggestion now that maybe it was a mistake not to bring it forward?
That's what, I mean, I think it's a pretty good consideration. We have suggested to put forward the race at least a couple of times, but, as we know, the organizers, they have to decide, and we are here in order to guarantee that we will have a proper race and a safe one. So.
OK, thank you very much. I'll let you get back to work. So that's the official line from the FIA, the people responsible for running this race safely.
Yeah, that's the crucial difference, isn't it? Because the FIA are there to run the race. It's up to the promoter, the organisers, when they want the race and all that sort of thing. It's the FIA who are responsible for just getting on with putting the race on.
Yeah, they certainly are, and they're a travelling circus, if you like, a travelling crew that goes around with Formula One, so they understand all of these circuits. Charlie Whiting, who's the race director, and it's his decision in the first instance whether we stop the race or whether we continue, start behind safety car XYZ. He's been in this game since the 70s, and so he's seen many, many Grand Prix, and many wet Grand Prix here as well.
Charlie Whiting has not missed a Grand Prix since 1978, and so a very impressive performance from him. We have had one race that never got started, which was in 1985 in Spa, when the track started to break up, so they ran it a couple of months later. The shortest Grand Prix we've ever had was a 14-lap race in Adelaide back in 1991. It was, and that was, so we, at the moment, we're on course for setting the shortest ever Formula One race, but the cars will be going back out in about 4 minutes' time here in Suzuka.
I have to say, Jack, you know a heck of a lot of information. I didn't realise all of that. Thank you very much. I think this won't be the shortest. I think if we have a 40-minute window, then it'll looking pretty good. But Jenny, you've got some information for us.
I have. I'm just having a look through some of the information that's been rattling around, and apparently, according to the FIA rules, on red flagged races, it's just one has become, it effectively means that the Grand Prix hasn't started yet if a result is declared. So does that mean that we go back to the lap count of having 53 laps to go? I'm so confused by this wet weather rules, and we don't get to see them very often. I think that's why.
Well, the race has not been declared. I think that's the point at the moment. The red flag has come out. They have. The point was from now, they could declare the race if they wanted and award half points, and we all get on our planes in Nagoya and hope we don't get caught up in a massive typhoon. But as it is, the race hasn't been declared. It's just been halted for this time. So the race will resume on lap 3 of 53.
I see. It all begins to make sense. So you guys are just far more clever than I. Right, there are lots of people running around now trying to get themselves ready for the restart of this race. So once again, the mechanics go through the process of removing the awnings from over their cars, of moving away all the tyre and trolley, the blanket trolleys, and getting those to the back. There's a lot of people standing around with laptops plugged into the car, and that's almost like the heartbeat, isn't it, of the car when they're reading and looking for information.
Yeah, it certainly is. You know, they're monitoring probably 500 pieces of information in the pits live at any one time when the car is running around. And when the engineers have a chance to plug in, they always want to do it just to make those final double checks. You know, right now the teams are getting very much prepared for a restart. We're 2 minutes away from that, and the safety car will be out there, Jenny, for a minimum of 1 lap. We've just had that information come through, so the safety car will do a minimum of 1 lap before it pulls into the pits. But we do have that window now of 30 minutes that looks like it's going to be a little bit brighter.
Yeah, it's interesting talking to people down here on their opinions. It's very clear that those conditions when the race started behind this safety car were very treacherous. As I said, the river of water running down the pit lane from the top to the bottom. So that's from the slightly slower teams right down to the top team in the paddock at the moment, which is Red Bull. That river has now subsided, so it's just a trickle of water running down. So conditions very, very different right now. We'll see how long it takes to get a dry line. And whether, you know, it will soon be on the intermediate tyres rather than the wet tyres, which can, of course, only happen once the safety car comes in.
Yeah, the intermediate tyre, it basically you would run it when you don't have big puddles.
It starts being inter conditions, but there's a big front coming in, then maybe it's no point going to inters.
So that's interesting from Nico Rosberg's team radio there, basically saying even if the conditions are good enough for inters reasonably soon, if there's a lot more rain coming in, is it worth going to the intermediate tyres, which disperse less water than the full wet tyres that they're on now?
He's thinking that if there's another front coming in, then the race will probably be put behind a safety car or stopped again, Jack. And he doesn't want to have made a pit stop if others haven't, because that would then put him behind. He's clearly thinking championship here, and at the moment he's leading the race as well. And so if from that point of view he's trying to outthink of what may happen. Just get those ideas in your engineer's mind.
So, as the race gets restarted here in Japan, behind the safety car will pull out of the pits. All the Formula One cars will follow it out, and it's going to be racing on the circuit once again. We haven't actually had any true racing yet, but the cars are going round behind the safety car now then. as we are here, and all the Japanese fans in front of us start to applaud politely as the cars go out onto the circuit. An incredible appetite for Formula One here in Japan. The grandstand in front of us is absolutely packed. There's thousands of people in uncovered seating all the way around the circuit. Down to our left we can see the huge Turn 1 grandstand where they're used to seeing so much action, up through the S's and out towards the back of the circuit. We're nestled in the Japanese countryside, just 4 hours south of Tokyo. I went out for a walk around the circuit on Friday, and we're really in the countryside. I was climbing through undergrowth. There were spiders the size you wouldn't believe. Bumblebees as big as your fist. It's really, really bizarre. But apart from moving on from that David Attenborough moment, it's a great circuit to drive as well, isn't it, Alan?
It's a fantastic circuit to drive. I have to be honest, I've never seen bumblebees the size of my fist when I've been driving around here. But it is
Fernando
beautiful.
Alonso has come to a stop. Sorry to jump across you there, Alan, but Fernando Alonso has taken the steering wheel out. He's climbing out of his car. Has he had an off, or has the car broken down? He's furious, whatever's happened.
Yeah, it looks like a technical problem because it's just coming up through the S's, so he's probably done about a mile from the start of the restart of this lap, and he's unbuckled himself. He's taken the steering wheel off. He's put the steering wheel back on. It looks like he's trying to do a reset or something because he's still got his radio attached, and his engineer in the pits is giving him some information, but the big grab crane is coming out to take away Fernando Alonso's Ferrari.
Yes, there's no damage on the car, so it has just ground to a halt coming out of the S's literally 20 or 30 seconds after we got this race restarted. So that is a disaster for Fernando Alonso, who we believe will be departing the Ferrari team in the coming weeks and at the end of the season. And it's been a tough couple of years at Ferrari for Fernando Alonso, and it's not getting any easier. Meanwhile, cars are out on circuit, and Alan, looking at them, the spray is considerably less than when they were out at the start of this race.
Yeah, there's very little spray in comparison. There's still quite a lot, but in comparison to what it was before, then the circuit is in much, much better conditions. We have been told that there's going to be a minimum of 1 lap behind the safety car. They're coming through as Alonso is now on the back of a motorbike to go back to the pits. They're coming through to end this lap 3 of 53, but right now the circuit's in a pretty good position. Jenny, have you got any more information on Ferrari?
I'm getting information that it may be an electrical failure due to water in the car. Now that seems unlikely because they did have the tarpaulin over the top of it, but that's the rumour we're hearing, electrical failure due to water in the car potentially.
You'd think they'd make them waterproof, Alan.
Well, they are. They should be. They should be waterproof. The steering wheels have to be waterproof because effectively it's like having your computer but in your steering wheel, and they have got so much data in there and the way that they work, so they have to be waterproof for these instances.
So, to give you a rundown, well, we're just about to try and find out what happened to Fernando Alonso. He was in second gear coming out of the second corner and shifting up through the gears. Everything was fine as he wound his way through the S's, and any moment now the car just appears to die, doesn't it? He suddenly loses everything and has to pull to the side of the circuit, and that is the end of his race without having completed a racing lap in anger. So that's a disaster for Fernando Alonso. Just to give you a rundown of what the order is now then, we haven't had any racing. We're still behind the safety car, but it's Nico Rosberg in first place. Lewis Hamilton is second. In third place is Valtteri Bottas in the Williams. Fourth is Felipe Massa. Fifth now is Daniel Ricciardo after Fernando Alonso's retirement. Kevin Magnussen and Jenson Button in the McLarens are 6th and 7th. Vettel and Raikkonen are 8th and 9th, with Sergio Perez completing the top 10 here in the Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka.
Yeah, and as now they're coming through the 2 Degner corners, going up to the far side of the circuit, and Lewis Hamilton is starting to prepare his car for a restart by waving around and hitting the accelerator and the brake pretty hard. That generates a lot of temperature into the brakes, which then naturally goes into the tyre as well and gives the wet tyre that extra little bit of heat that they need to work. But there's no indication the safety car is coming in yet, but you've got to be prepared just in case.
Lewis Hamilton has come on the radio to his Mercedes team and said that the track is drying up a lot, so that is positive news. And let's see if there's any negative. Oh, let's hear from Hamilton's radio first.
Get my right brake temperature up. Some of that looks like a sensor issue, some of that looks like a sensor issue, so don't focus on it too much.
Track's drying up a lot. It's definitely not a sensor problem. My brake is running full.
So there's Lewis Hamilton just chatting to his race engineer about some brake temperature issues, and as you heard, he said the track is drying up a lot. Jennie Gow.
Yes, Fernando Alonso's just come into the paddock on the back of a scooter. He's been taken directly to the rear of his garage where he kept his helmet on, head down, walked straight through the media waiting for him and into the back of the garage. He will want to know what went wrong with that car, and I bet he can't wait to leave Ferrari.
Yeah, I wonder if it was a Honda scooter, Jenny, if you could find that out.
I think it was a Kawasaki, actually.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, you know your bikes, Jenny, so we'll trust you on that one. So, Fernando Alonso...
The rain doesn't get heavy. I think we'll be good to go soon.
That's Daniel Ricciardo's team radio. That's him saying that if the rain doesn't get any heavier, we'll be good to go soon. So this is all getting quite exciting. We had a few fearful moments, didn't we, where we thought that might be the end of the Japanese Grand Prix. But you'll be delighted to know here on BBC Radio 5 Live, we should be going racing reasonably soon. No news just yet of when the safety car will be coming in, but it's looking good.
Yeah, it is. And lap 5 of 53, there's going to be a few people will see this as a big opportunity for points. I was speaking to one of the engineers, Adrian Suttel's engineer at Sauber, and they've had a dreadful year, but they see this as a chance for them maybe to steal some points and leapfrog them up in the championship. Another one is going to be Caterham, Kamui Kobayashi, local hero, but also someone that knows this circuit pretty well. He knows these conditions as well, and I think that they will be trying to get something out of it. Marussia, well, they want it only for themselves because they're ahead of Caterham right now.
Absolutely, and Caterham are the only team in the Formula 1 field who have never ever scored points. Sauber haven't scored any this season, but they've had a very strong history in Formula 1, but Caterham have yet to pick up any points in Formula 1, so that would be a great opportunity. And as you say, with local man Kamui Kobayashi and former Japanese Formula 3 champion Marcus Ericsson piloting their cars, then this could be the day for Caterham, which would be great, especially considering their difficult week that they've had, but still a long way to go in some treacherous conditions as the cars make their way around the hairpin here in Suzuka, where we've seen some great overtakes over the years. The track then sweeps around to the right towards the famous spoon curve with the double apex left-hander heading towards the flat-out left-hander at 130R and down into the final chicane. It really is a stunning circuit designed by John Hugenholtz, who was also part of the design team at the Zandvoort circuit in the Netherlands, just outside of Amsterdam, and that's another very exciting circuit. Formula 1 doesn't go there anymore, unfortunately, but I digress. The cars are coming round. Still no news that the safety car will be coming in just yet, so it looks like we'll have another lap or two under safety car conditions, but it can't be too long because it looks as though the rain has pretty much totally stopped looking out of the window. The mist and the spray is still kicking up from the back of these cars, though, and it makes visibility still a challenge, especially when you get out towards that stretch from Spoon down to 130R, because there are parts of this circuit that are not totally engulfed in trees, but there's an awful lot around, and the spray sort of holds there.
Yeah, the spray does hold on this track, there is no question about it, and the rivers as well, because once you've had that deluge of water, all of the grass areas to the side are saturated, so even though the rain maybe drains off most of it, then you still have got these rivers that do continue. And as they now pass just below us, going down the start and finish straight, the main line is okay, but if anyone will want to overtake and pull to the inside, then there's a heck of a lot.
The rain that we spoke about in half an hour, that's not going to happen. It's going to come later. We expect to have around 35 more laps, so it'll be a race to lap 40, currently on lap 5.
And that is important. That's Valtteri Bottas being told about the weather conditions, and Williams are now saying they reckon we can get to lap 40, and at lap 40 that becomes a full points race once we get past there. So this is all looking reasonably promising this afternoon, as myself and Allan McNish bring you the commentary here in our commentary box overlooking the pit lane as the cloud starts to disperse, with Jennie Gow down in the pit lane.
Yes, and it's that time of day when everybody gets the normal blowers that they use to cool down the tyres and all the air holes in their cars, and they put them to work on the track.
Puddles are not a problem.
Lewis Hamilton saying that the track is as good as it's ever going to get, and the puddles aren't a problem, Jenny.
But just picking up there on what Jenny was saying, the dryers are drying the pit boxes because the guys might have to come in and change off those full wet tyres to go to the intermediates if the circuit conditions just keep on getting better. And looking up and down the pit lane, the driest pit box of all is Williams. They must have been out there right from the beginning when it stopped raining, trying to dry up their pit box. They're the ones that are thinking this race has got to go. You've got 35 minutes, let's get going with it and prepare for that, because this is maybe the chance.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. The Williams pit box is almost bone dry. Everyone else have the mechanics out there with the...
Conditions are fine now. It's perfect to drive now.
Jean-Eric Verne there, the Toro Rosso driver, almost getting a bit angsty that he's not racing. He's down in 18th place and he's saying, look, the conditions are fine, come on, let's go for it. But as of yet, the safety car is still out here in the Japanese Grand Prix. We've completed 5 laps so far of this 53-lap race. Lap 40 is the crucial one. Once we go past lap 40, even if the race has to be stopped because of weather or any other reasons, they will still award full points. Nico Rosberg is the man in the lead because he started on pole position. Lewis Hamilton, his championship-leading Mercedes teammate, is in second place right behind him, and then it's the 2 Williams of Valtteri Bottas and Felipe Massa. Daniel Ricciardo completing the top 5 as they were on the grid, with the exception of Fernando Alonso, who has already retired from this race as his Ferrari died. And Jenny, we can go down to her. She's at Mercedes.
Yes, just to let you know that Rosberg, as the leaders go past us here in the pit lane, Rosberg's been told that he has a problem with his telemetry. So problem for the Mercedes of Nico Rosberg.
They haven't been the most reliable. They've been the fastest car all year by quite a considerable margin, but they have had quite a fair share of technical issues. You know, both cars have been out of a race because of that. They had the problems in Canada as well, which really afflicted both cars, but ultimately only put Lewis Hamilton out of the event. But that's 2 races on the trot where Nico Rosberg has had issues with...
The rivers are slightly improving. Visibility is, as soon as you're higher than 140, very poor.
So that's Sebastian Vettel coming over the radio, the Red Bull driver, saying that once you get over 140, presumably miles an hour, no, kilometres an hour, then the visibility gets very poor. So there's still some concerns out there from the drivers, but we had that news from Jenny that Nico Rosberg has lost his telemetry. And how is that going to affect him? What does that mean that the team can't do?
Well, it means that basically they've got no information on the heartbeat of the car. It means that they can't look at it to see what they need to do. Hamilton's radio.
Charlie, the track is fine. We've already done 2 more laps already. And the track is good.
Lewis Hamilton a bit punchy there. Come on, Charlie. Charlie Whiting, that's the race director. Even though the radio communication goes to the team, it also goes to the race director. And that's him saying, come on, let's get on with this. Look, coming back to Nico Rosberg, it more means the team doesn't have the information, how the hybrid systems are working, what the fuel is like, you know, how his fuel usage is, even though that won't be a particular issue in this wet Grand Prix.
So lap 7 of 53, and we have been behind the safety car for the whole of the race so far, with a brief period spent under red flag in the pit lane. It's Nico Rosberg who is leading the way, still having started from pole position. Hamilton second, Bottas and Massa in the 2 Williams are 3rd and 4th. Daniel Ricciardo is now 5th because Fernando Alonso broke down on the 3rd lap of the race as he came out of the pits after the red flag period. His Ferrari conked out essentially as he wound his way up through the S's. We've heard many drivers coming over the radio and saying
it's not far off intermediates already.
Things like that, which was Lewis Hamilton coming over and saying we're not far off intermediate tyres. They're currently on the full wet tyres, which are designed to disperse the most amount of water possible, and when you switch to the intermediates, that means that the tyres don't get rid of as much water, which you want, and give you more grip. So that's what Lewis Hamilton is saying. We're almost ready to make the change onto the less extreme wet tyres.
I have to say, I think Lewis Hamilton is just more putting the pressure on Charlie Whiting, who is in discussions with Herbie Blash alongside him, and they will be making the decision not necessarily just on what Lewis Hamilton is saying, but what the rest of the grid, and also with their weather. But Jenny, have you got some more information?
I have no more information on that, unfortunately. I wish I could, but my direct line to Charlie Whiting is not in use at the moment. No, I was just going to say the cars have just come through the start-finish straight again, and once again the safety car continues to stay out. So this is lap 8 of 53, and the reason Lewis Hamilton's so anxious to get this car in is that he wants to go racing, because he wants to have a chance of trying to beat Nico Rosberg in this race.
It's funny, if I was Nico Rosberg, I would say, my goodness, this is pretty wet out here at the moment. We need to keep the safety car out for a few more laps, Charlie. Whereas the people behind are obviously pushing in the other direction. Every single one of these people's only thinking about themselves. And that is exactly why they're in Formula One.
It's interesting because in the last half hour we've gone from a situation where it would be absolutely ludicrous to go racing and everybody thinks, why are we doing this, why are we here, why have we started the race now, to the situation where all the drivers are saying, why aren't we racing? It's ludicrous that we're not racing. So that's how quickly the conditions can turn around here in Suzuka. Of course, heavy rain has been a factor of the Japanese Grand Prix for a good number of years. 1994 we had to run the race in 2 parts because of the heavy torrential wet weather conditions. We also had to cancel qualifying on 2 occasions here and run it on Sunday morning. So it's not unusual to get wet weather conditions here in Suzuka, but this is some of the worst it's been for a while.
It has, you know, the race in Fuji, which is not far from here, that Lewis Hamilton was victorious, and it was torrential weather, and that was also quite a notorious race because it's where Sebastian Vettel, a young rookie in a Toro Rosso, hit the back of the Red Bull team leader, being Mark Webber.
Absolutely. So that was a superb drive from Lewis Hamilton that day, and he has been very strong in wet conditions before. He won an incredible wet race in Monaco in his debut season in Formula 1, also a treacherous British Grand Prix at Silverstone. So Hamilton knows what he's doing in wet weather conditions as the cars come around to complete the 8th lap of the race, just coming down into the final chicane now, the scene of the clash between Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna at the end of the 1989 Formula 1 Grand Prix season when they were both teammates at McLaren. Are we going to see similar drama today between the teammates Rosberg and Hamilton at Mercedes, who are in 1st and 2nd places at the moment? As they come over the line, the spray is considerably less than it was at the start of this race.
And also they're going considerably faster as well.
We think people may follow it into tyre.
That's Jenson Button, the McLaren driver, being told over the team radio that when the safety car comes into the pits, cars might come in and switch to those intermediate tyres we were talking about.
Well, Jenson Button's been a person that can always work out, and he's got an inner instinct and feel for what is the right tyre choice and the right time to do it in these difficult situations. And he's pulled out wins, he's pulled out fantastic results, podiums, when it didn't look like it on pure pace, out of his way of thinking and way of feeling.
The safety car will be in this lap, so the round of applause comes from the Japanese fans beneath us in the grandstand. They're delighted because we're about to get some proper racing here in Suzuka. So after, it'll be 9 laps behind the safety car, and then including 1 red flag period, and then the racing will be getting underway, which is very good news. So Nico Rosberg will be the man who's...
Do you think the conditions are suitable for extreme tyres? Is it getting close to inters?
Still extremes.
Okay, understood.
It's a chat between Daniel Ricciardo, the Red Bull driver, and his race engineer, and Ricciardo saying that it's not quite close enough to go for intermediate tyres just yet. So when the safety car comes in, it'll be Nico Rosberg leading them away, Lewis Hamilton in 2nd place, the 2 Mercedes in 1st and 2nd, the 2 Williamses in 3rd and 4th, Valtteri Bottas and Felipe Massa. Daniel Ricciardo will be 5th in the Red Bull. Kevin Magnussen, Jenson Button, Vettel, Raikkonen and Perez completing the top 10. Kvyat, Hulkenberg, Sutil, Gutierrez, Grosjean, Bianchi, Kobayashi, Verne, Chilton, Maldonado and Ericsson completing our 21 runners in that order, as we will get racing underway very, very soon. The cars are just coming out of the Spoon Curve, which is about the halfway point on the lap. That's the furthest point away on this circuit they get from the first corner, and soon Nico Rosberg, who's the sound you can hear beneath us, he will start to ease back, let the safety car go into the pits, and he will decide when we get this race restarted. So we've had 44 minutes of not racing here on BBC Radio 5 Live, but now we're about to have some action. Nico Rosberg has slowed the cars down. Lewis Hamilton has come right up behind his Mercedes teammate, so he is ready to floor the throttle when Nico Rosberg decides to go. As they come into the final corner, Rosberg has gone for it already, but Hamilton is pretty close with him. As we go green now, over the safety car line they come, and finally we are racing in Suzuka. The cars flash past our commentary box, and applause from the Japanese fans. It looks as though Kevin Magnussen has come into the pits. No, it's Jenson Button in the other McLaren that has come in to make an early switch to intermediate tyres, but the race gets underway. Rosberg leads, Hamilton is 2nd, the 2 Williams in 3rd and 4th of Bottas and Massa. Now it's going to be interesting to see what sort of pace can Hamilton do? Because it must be so difficult, Allan McNish, our Formula 1 summariser, to follow the car in front under these conditions.
Well, in these conditions, actually, in some ways you're better to be second, because you can actually use the other guy as a braking marker point, because there's not that much spray as we are right now. Lewis Hamilton, he's sticking behind as he comes through the long Dunlop corner, and as there is a little bit more spray, then he has to lift off the throttle, but right now it is tricky for everybody out there. Jenson Button in the pits, gone to intermediates. Pastor Maldonado in the Lotus following and doing the same.
So Pastor Maldonado in as well to switch onto the intermediate tyres, which are basically the less heavy-duty tyres compared to the full wets that most of the cars are out on now. And it does look like it's pretty difficult conditions.
So bad. Copy that, understood on visibility.
And that's Felipe Massa complaining that the visibility is so bad in his Williams, currently running in 4th position. So he's saying that maybe he doesn't think the conditions are quite right. Sebastian Vettel in the Red Bull is coming up towards the left-hander at Spoon. And from the onboard shots we're getting, Alan, and Vettel just about getting the car in. What do you make of these visibility conditions?
Right, it's very difficult to see when you do get spray. When you get up to 200 miles per hour, 195 miles per hour coming towards 130R, and you can't see more than 50 metres in front of you, then you're basically driving into a wall of spray. And so from that point of view, it is treacherous right now. But from Williams' point of view, they're 3rd and 4th, and that puts them further ahead of Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship. Also, with now Alonso being out, it means that Bottas is climbing over the back of 4th place in the Drivers' Championship. OK, we're only on lap 11 of 53 though.
And so we complete essentially the first lap of racing here in Suzuka, but we're on to the 11th lap, and Nico Rosberg leads 1.3 seconds clear of his Mercedes teammate Lewis Hamilton in 2nd place. Valtteri Bottas and Felipe Massa still in 3rd and 4th, with Daniel Ricciardo 5th. There was a move which came to see Sergio Perez go past Daniel Kvyat, and he's up now into 9th position. They were going side by side down towards 130R, which is brave to do in these scenarios, but it's Rosberg who leads by 1.3 seconds over Lewis Hamilton as the cars now wind their way up through the S's, climbing all the time as they weave left, right, and then into the long left-hander of the Dunlop curve.
Yeah, and that first lap time of Nico Rosberg is 22 seconds slower than what he managed in qualifying. And that gives you an indication of what the weather conditions are like. But Jenson Button's radio now.
And Jenson, you are matching the Mercedes. This pace is good. This is a good move.
Sounds fantastic news for Jenson Button fans. That early switch towards the intermediates seems to be working for him. Already he is the same speed as the Mercedes 1 and 2, Rosberg and Hamilton, who have pulled a 5-second gap over 3rd place Valtteri Bottas in the Williams.
On that first sector that Jenson Button has just gone through, the only drivers on the circuit quicker in that first sector were the 2 Mercedes. He was quicker than the Williams, the Red Bulls, so this is looking like it could be a strong decision for Jenson Button. And will we now see everyone else pile into the pits?
Daniel, other people are stopping for inters. They look quick. What do you think?
Yep, happy to stop.
We're about to get some very busy action then in the pit lane, as Daniel Ricciardo says he is happy to stop. Nico Rosberg, the race leader, stays out, as does Lewis Hamilton. Is this the sort of scenario where Hamilton decides to stay out and gamble?
And Bottas is in the pits, but one of them's jumped to Williams, and Valtteri Bottas is in the pits. Daniel Ricciardo follows him. Kevin Magnussen in the McLaren follows him. The Ferrari of Raikkonen as well. Everybody seems to be coming in for those intermediates, taking that gamble early.
OK, so Sergio Perez in as well, Daniel Kvyat in as well. So it's only Rosberg, Hamilton, Massa, Vettel, Hülkenberg, Sutil and Bianchi who have stayed out on the full wet weather tyres. So as the cars flash past the commentary box, Jenson Button goes past. Where's Button going to come out? That's going to be very interesting. Button is going to be through, and I think he's going to be up. Is he past the Williams? Yes, he is. So Jenson Button is up past the Williams of Valtteri Bottas that was running in 3rd position, and so that's very, very good work from McLaren, Jenny.
Yeah, super work, lots of pit stops. Just to confirm, Alonso out of this race. He did have an electrical problem. It's being investigated.
OK, thanks for that. Fernando Alonso had to retire whilst we were still under safety car conditions. We'd just come out after a red flag period in the pit lane. Nico Rosberg, meanwhile, is going very, very quick in the lead of this race. Who is going to blink first, Rosberg or Hamilton?
So inter tyres are slower at the moment.
Yeah, that's an interesting message that Nico Rosberg's just been given. The intermediate tyres are slower at the moment.
Well, they're slower than the two Mercedes, but they're not slower than anyone else on the track. And so from that point of view, there's a very delicate balance. If Jenson Button is more than 22 seconds behind Nico Rosberg, when Rosberg does decide to pit for the intermediate tyres, Rosberg will stay in the lead. Any less than that, Jenson Button could be leading this Grand Prix.
Nevertheless, Button, who started 8th on the grid, is certainly going to make up some positions with that early gamble as he came in. He did a 42.6 in the first sector, quicker than Nico Rosberg in sector 1. So surely the Mercedes have got to come into the pits, but they haven't. They have both stayed out. Lewis Hamilton has just closed the gap to 1.7 seconds. Into the pits now comes the remaining cars that were still out there. So Felipe Massa, Sebastian Vettel and Nico Hülkenberg have all come in 1 lap later than their main rivals, but the Mercedes are staying out there, which is a very, very interesting situation. Is it a case of, you know, when you're racing with your teammate, are you waiting for the other one to blink first, to make the decision first? Are you playing it conservative?
No, I think the fact of the matter is that they had a second in their pocket in every condition over the opposition. So therefore, why gamble and risk things in a tricky condition when they maybe don't need to?
Jenson Button then is now up into a net 3rd position. So Jenson Button, when the Mercedes pit, will either be 1st, 2nd or 3rd because of that early gamble. Brilliant work from him and the McLaren team. Meanwhile, let's try and figure out what the rest of the order is behind. It looks as though it's Bottas, Massa, Vettel and Ricciardo. So Sebastian Vettel, I think, is now in front of his Red Bull teammate.
Yes, he has. He jumped him with that, stopping 1 lap later. It was lap 12, the rest Rosberg.
Box for inter tyres.
Here's the crossover point. 1 minute 52 seems to be the crossover, 20 seconds slower than they were in qualifying.
And that was Nico Rosberg being told to come into the pits for intermediate tyres. Box means come into your pit box now. And so that's going to be very, very interesting to see whether the Mercedes will perhaps double stack.
No, I don't think they can. I think Lewis Hamilton will have to continue 1 more lap. He's only 2 seconds behind Nico Rosberg at the moment. So Rosberg's going to come in on lap 14, whereas Hamilton will probably come in on lap 15. Yes, that's correct. So Rosberg dives into the pits and Hamilton comes past and into the lead.
So into the pit lane comes Nico Rosberg, Jenny.
He dives past me. He's got those blue full wear tyres on. He makes his way down to his pit box, which is about 3/4 of the way down this pit lane. So a slow entry towards it. It's already been 12 seconds in the pit lane. He comes to a halt. The car team lift him up, all 22 men working, and he goes out on the intermediate tyres. It's a pit stop of 2.6 seconds.
Very swift pit stop then from Nico Rosberg, and he comes out comfortably in front of Jenson Button, who is just coming around the final corner now. So Mercedes, as Allan pointed out, haven't lost out because of the speed advantage they have. It's still going to be the Mercedes in 1st and 2nd places when Hamilton comes into the pits. Hamilton now will push, but surely he hasn't really got much hope of leapfrogging Nico Rosberg in these pit stops.
No, he doesn't have too much hope of it. However, he has got to take it. He's the fastest of anyone in the 1st sector. It depends really as how he will come out. It's all about that entry to the pit lane and the exit from the pit lane as much as it is about what happens on this in-lap for Lewis Hamilton.
So Lewis Hamilton is leading the Grand Prix here in Japan at the moment, but his teammate Nico Rosberg has just made a pit stop to change from the full wet tyres to the intermediate tyres. We tried to start racing 55 minutes ago here in Japan. We had a good 35 minutes behind the safety car, but now we have finally managed to get racing underway, and it's turning into a very, very intriguing Japanese Grand Prix. And we are now waiting for Lewis Hamilton to come into the pits to change to intermediate tyres to see where that brings him out in relation to his teammate Nico Rosberg, who was leading the race after qualifying on pole position yesterday.
And it's been a little bit of a scrappy middle sector for Lewis Hamilton, and he's gone wide at Spoon Corner. He ran very wide there, dropped about a second from ultimately his best, and so therefore that in-lap's massively compromised as he now dives down into the pit lane.
So Hamilton set the fastest 1st sector of anyone. He was pushing incredibly hard in the 2nd sector, and now he's in the pits.
Comes down the pit lane towards his team again. It's 3/4 of the way down. So can this be a little bit faster than Nico Rosberg's? Lewis Hamilton not known for consistency in his pit stops, but he pulls in. The team hold him for a moment and he is out. So was that a faster pit stop, and where will he come out? 2.8 seconds. How does that compare to Rosberg?
Rosberg is coming down the start-finish straight now and retakes the lead of the Grand Prix, but Lewis Hamilton, had he not run wide at Spoon Curve in the middle of that race, middle of that in-lap, could have been a lot closer.
I think he'd actually been in the lead of the race if he hadn't run wide, because he was faster on the first sector and he was quick on the in sector. It just happened to be that middle one when he went off at the spoon corner. Just pushing. In these situations, you have to attack. You can't be conservative. If you're conservative, you'll finish second. You're not here to finish second. You're here to win the race. And so he had to gamble a little bit. But unfortunately for Lewis Hamilton, he went wide.
A lot of oversteer.
That's Nico Rosberg complaining of a lot of oversteer in the Mercedes, but does that just mean he hasn't got much grip because it's wet?
Yeah, but it also means that the potential of changing that has gone from him, because they could have adjusted the front wing flap angles at the pit stop, but now he's changed to the intermediates and gone back out there. It means the car is too much on the nose, so when he turns the steering, the rear of the car is reacting too much to it, and that is not nice in this high-speed sections as he's now coming through the Sector 1 and Sector 2 here in Suzuka.
We're on lap 15 of the Japanese Grand Prix in 2014. Not many races to go after this, just 4 remaining: Russia, USA, Brazil and Abu Dhabi to finish off the season in the middle of November. And it's Nico Rosberg leading the way with Lewis Hamilton in second place. Jenson Button is running in third place for McLaren after a wonderful tyre choice strategy. Valtteri Bottas and Felipe Massa are fourth and fifth for the Williams team, but Felipe Massa is under huge pressure from Sebastian Vettel in the Red Bull, who's having one of his strongest races of the season so far, really putting pressure on the Brazilian Massa. But it's Rosberg leading the way at the moment.
It is, but the big, I would say, winner out of this so far is Jenson Button by that very early pit stop when he came in as the safety car pulled in to change onto those intermediate tyres. What that did was it got him out of the spray and the traffic of everybody else, and he was able to run at his speed with his clear vision and focus. The only other person on the circuit able to do that was Nico Rosberg, right out in front, and that's leapfrogged him up into a very good net third position.
So we had a long time behind the safety car here because of the terrible weather conditions. It's got better now. Does Jennie Gow bring us some positive news?
I can actually. I've just spoken to the FIA and they say there are only some small and light showers to the southwest of the circuit. So hopefully we can continue to race. Kevin Magnussen comes into the pit lane for McLaren. It's his birthday today. He turns 22 years old. He was on the intermediate tyres already, so I wonder what's brought him into the pit lane.
I think he's got a problem because he's cruising very, very slowly into his pit box there, so perhaps more of a problem for Magnussen than a decision to change tyres. That is his second unenforced pit stop, although he's back out underway again pretty quickly, so not quite sure what the problem was there for Kevin Magnussen. Meanwhile, there's a battle going on for fifth position. Sebastian Vettel is right behind Felipe Massa as they turn into the double right-hander of the two Degner corners, and Vettel will be trying to attack Felipe Massa before too long, and he's got Daniel Ricciardo, his Red Bull teammate, queued right up behind as they flash up towards the left-hand hairpin. Vettel goes for it towards the inside. Massa sees him coming, and Sebastian Vettel is through into fifth place, and that was a forceful move, Allan McNish.
Yeah, he slid down the inside and then he compromised Massa on his exit, and now Daniel Ricciardo's trying to take advantage of that as well. He's stuck right up the gearbox as he now comes around the flat out 7th gear right-hander and into spoon. Massa defends. Ricciardo looks now outside. You can't go there, Daniel. There is absolutely no room. Massa still defending. Ricciardo lining him up to have a run down towards 130R. He's got the power down and now he's on the inside. I think now that's job done for Ricciardo, unless the Mercedes power just pulls Massa back in front.
And that's exactly what's happened. So Daniel Ricciardo almost got alongside, but Felipe Massa in the Mercedes-powered car was able to out-drag the the Renault-powered machine of Daniel Ricciardo as the white car with the blue and purple flashes turns its way through the chicane, and it was a very forceful move from Sebastian Vettel, but now it's going to be absolutely together as they come across the start-finish line. Felipe Massa now running in 6th place, Daniel Ricciardo 7th, but this is the challenge that Red Bull have in these conditions, well, in all conditions, is they're not quick enough in a straight line to try and make a pass.
No, he's got to do exactly, Daniel Ricciardo's got to do exactly what his teammate Sebastian Vettel did, is try and attack on this first half of the circuit when it's all corners, and then to defend on the big long straights, because clearly straight line speed is not their strength.
So Felipe Massa then dropping to 6th place. His Williams teammate Valtteri Bottas currently in 4th, as around the outside goes Daniel Ricciardo in the S's. Wonderful move from Ricciardo in these wet conditions to go around the outside, a la Eddie Irvine in 1997. A great move, and he is up into 6th position now, and Felipe Massa drops down again in his Williams. Jenny.
What a beautiful move that was from Daniel Ricciardo on that Williams. We do know the Williams has struggled in these weather conditions. They don't like the wet weather for some reason. So yes, he has the power, but he doesn't have the grip and the feel in that car. It's unhappy in the rain. Yep, and Felipe Massa is unhappy as well. Felipe Massa seems a little unhappier than his teammate Valtteri Bottas, who's 2.5 seconds up the road of these battling trio at the moment. Yeah, but Bottas has dropped back another 3 seconds in the last 2 laps to Jenson Button, who is now in a very, very solid third place. However, he is 16 seconds behind second place Lewis Hamilton, who is closing in on Nico Rosberg, the race leader right now. And so we're on lap... what lap are we actually on here, Jack? 18 now of 53. We're almost at the halfway point of the 40 laps, which is the laps we need to reach to get full points if the race were to stop. Nico Rosberg's radio.
So expecting light rain in 8 minutes.
8 minutes, that's about 4 laps at this pace, expecting light rain. Nico Rosberg's information coming to him. Basically, he needs to be pushing to keep Lewis Hamilton behind if that rain does come, because there's a potential, if it does come heavily, there's another safety car. They are on the intermediate tyre, they're on the tyre that doesn't like standing water, and so therefore they've got to be a little bit careful with this positioning. So it's Nico Rosberg leading the way, 1.2 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton. The Mercedes battles continue. The McLaren of Jenson Button is in third place. Great performance from him, but his McLaren teammate has been having troubles so far today, Jenny. Yes, on his birthday, Kevin Magnussen had to come in for a third pit stop. The reason, he had to change his steering wheel, took on a new set of intermediate tyres at the same time. He's now running in last place, 21st. 8 o'clock back in the UK. If you're just waking up, here's a little recap of what you've missed. Not that much racing, actually, because we tried to get started an hour ago. We were under safety car conditions and then red flag conditions, and since then we have now managed to go racing. We're 18 laps in, and Nico Rosberg is leading, 1.2 seconds clear of his teammate Lewis Hamilton, as Sebastian Vettel is now challenging to try and get past Valtteri Bottas for 4th place, and he's managed to go all the way around the outside at the hairpin. And in these conditions, Allan McNish, our F1 summariser, there can be more grip on the outside of the circuit. Yeah, but also I think the Red Bull has just got significantly more grip and capability to get the energy and the temperature into these tyres, the intermediate tyres, in such a slippery circuit condition than the Williams of Bottas and Massa. They're dropping, not quite like a stone, but certainly dropping from the pace they had. It was a case of that Vettel just lined him up as he came out of Degner 2 on the rise up into the hairpin, and then you had Bottas defending in the inside. Vettel, no second opportunity given or required. He just went straight round the outside of it and accelerated off. The gap at the front is down to just 1 second between Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton, so they are getting very, very close to one another now, and Hamilton will have to work very hard for Nico Rosberg. Daniel Ricciardo is going to be the next man to try and attack Valtteri Bottas. That's the sound of the Renault engine underneath that powers the Red Bull car as they come down into the first corner, which drops away from you, and then it tightens into the second right-hander of turn number 2 before we head up into the S's. Still difficult conditions though out there. Very difficult, but I have to say the Williams cars are struggling. They've just got no grip at all, as Daniel Ricciardo's taken an opportunistic dive down the inside, but Bottas is defending, came back at him. Ricciardo's trying to do exactly the same round the outside as he did with Massa and completed it. Daniel Ricciardo is now up another position. He's up into 5th place with exactly a repetitive move on Bottas as he did with his teammate Massa. Wonderful driving from Daniel Ricciardo. He will now try and close in on his teammate Sebastian Vettel in the other Red Bull, currently in 4th position. And we can go down now to hear some more information from Jenny in the pits. Yeah, just to let you know that Felipe Massa, who's getting passed left, right and centre by these Red Bulls, is struggling on the set of tyres he's currently on for some reason. He's been in touch with the team, but they're saying to him, you know, just sit it out. You're going to have to continue for a moment. They're looking at the data to see what they can do to help him. But at the moment, he's just going to have to wait. Yeah, but it's not just Felipe Massa, I've got to say, Jenny. It's both of the Williams cars are now 34 seconds behind the race leader, Nico Rosberg, and they are not quick in the wet. We've seen that through the course of this year. They believed, they understood how to make these intermediate and wet tyres work better, how to get more energy into them, how to get more temperature into them. But clearly, round here at Suzuka, one of the hardest circuits for tyres, they haven't been able to do it. Hamilton's radio.
Okay, Lewis, forecast is no more rain to the end of the race, but low certainty.
Okay, so that's Lewis Hamilton being told that they're not expecting much more rain before the end of this race. And that's the forecast, but it's a low certainty. So that basically means there is a chance we'll get to the end of this race without having any more rain, as he is closing in on his Mercedes teammate Nico Rosberg, who on the 20th lap of this Japanese Grand Prix is leading the way here in Suzuka. Hamilton's chasing him. He's got the gap down to a second. Are these conditions, when you're Lewis Hamilton running in second, a second behind your teammate, how difficult is the visibility?
The visibility now is not too bad, I have to say. There's been a lot of spray that has already been, or water that's already been thrown up into the air and sort of dispersed itself. And so Lewis Hamilton, I don't think, is worried about that point of view. I think he's worried about the fact he's got a silver Mercedes in front of him. And if it finishes like this, he would be second in the World Championship, not first, because it's Nico Rosberg that's there. Its gap's about 1 second, so he's not quite close enough to make a move, but clearly they are still significantly quicker than anyone on the circuit. 0.6 advantage per lap over Jenson Button in third, and Vettel and Ricciardo and the two Red Bulls running at the same pace as Jenson.
So we're on lap 20 out of 53. We also have 1 hour and 15 minutes remaining on the clock. It's either of those, whichever of those expires first, is the point at which this Grand Prix will end. Nico Rosberg comes across the line to go on to lap 21, still just 1.2 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton in second place. But now, will Hamilton just have to bide his time? Will he be able to attack in these conditions?
No, what you do is you try to pressurise the guy ahead of you. You make sure that he cannot relax for a second. In these conditions, you're significantly more on tenterhooks anyway, because you know that you have to push. You know that if you just run a little bit wide and get onto the curb, or you get onto a slightly wetter patch, then it's very easy, as Lewis Hamilton did on his in-lap prior to his pit stop, just to run off the track. And that is all that Hamilton will need to get past Rosberg. However, Rosberg is one of the most stable people I know on this grid in terms of not making a mistake under pressure.
Monza.
Except for Monza.
he was forced into a mistake in Monza and cut through the first chicane, which allowed Hamilton to go past. But that was the first real mistake we'd seen from Nico Rosberg.
He doesn't make many of them, that's all I can say, Jack.
One in the course of a season is fine, is it? As we see a Force India just struggling with some traction. That's Nico Hülkenberg in 8th place currently. Nico Rosberg leads, Hamilton second. Jenson Button's in third for McLaren. Then it's the two Red Bulls of Vettel and Ricciardo. Valtteri Bottas is in 6th. Felipe Massa's in 7th. Nico Hülkenberg 8th. Raikkonen 9th. Daniel Kvyat is in 10th position. And currently Max Chilton is running down in 21st place in the Marussia. And that's Force India we saw going wide was Nico Hülkenberg. He didn't lose too much time there.
No, but he just shows how it's very easy just to attack a little bit. He's pushing on the back of Felipe Massa's Williams and ran a little bit wide at turn 1, got onto the AstroTurf that is just on the edge defining part of the circuit, and that just dragged him off the track and he lost a couple of seconds. But now, as Nico Rosberg is leading, and just with Lewis Hamilton coming right underneath us now.
Pace is good. You and Sebastian are quickest cars on circuit, half a second quicker than everyone else.
That's a very true point, actually. Daniel Ricciardo being told, and that last lap Vettel did a 1 minute 53.6, Rosberg did a 1 minute 54.3, so the two Red Bulls are the quickest cars out there at the moment on the track. Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton continuing to lead the way in their Mercedes. They are some 33 seconds clear of the two Red Bulls, so I don't think they're going to be coming under threat anytime soon. But Alan, even if we get no rain before the end of this race, we're not going to be seeing slick tyre conditions at all, are we?
At the moment it doesn't look that way, but we're going to definitely get it to the point where you'll get someone maybe risking it across, I would suspect. But we're only on lap 22 of 53. There's quite a little bit of time to go. I think the biggest factor that we've also got to consider later on is the fact that it gets dark at 5:15 local time, which is in an hour and 7 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got an hour and 11 minutes left on the clock. So Nico Rosberg leads, Lewis Hamilton second, still just a second between the Mercedes drivers.
Bit of drizzle coming down here in the pit lane now, and I just want to raise a question really. Could potentially the Red Bulls be on a wet setup so that the car's responding really well to this?
Jenny, Daniel Ricciardo did say yesterday, I think to you, that they were prepared for the wet and they were thinking that way in qualifying. And you can't really do too much, or you normally don't do too much to the car, because you've got maximum downforce on anyway, and you've got to prepare yourself just in case that it does dry up. But it's clear that the drier the circuit is getting, then the faster the Red Bulls are relative to the competition. And so from that point of view, I wouldn't say they've gone for a wet setup, but I think they have definitely got their car tuned in better than they ever did in the dry, because they were slow in the dry.
If we do get to getting awarded full points for this race, which means going past lap 40, and we're currently on lap 23, Nico Rosberg will retake the lead of the championship, but only by 4 points over his teammate Lewis Hamilton. So Hamilton currently leads by 3 points. Rosberg will get 25 for winning. Hamilton will get 18 for finishing second place, so that means that it'll be a 4-point swing with Rosberg moving into first position. But we've got a long way to go before any of that happens. The biggest man in danger from the Red Bulls really is Jenson Button, who is lapping a second and a half slower than the Red Bulls. Button's currently in third place, having one of his excellent drives.
So Nico, let us know on your scale how much you are pushing. I'm flat out.
That's not a special scale, is it?
Yeah, but I think that was a bit of a silly question by the engineer. He's got his championship rival right behind him. Of course he's driving flat out.
So second place is Lewis Hamilton, less than a second now behind teammate Nico Rosberg, who's leading the way. As I say, Button in third, and Jenson Button doing an excellent job so far today. But is he driving for his career here?
Well, Jenson Button is definitely once again laying down what he can do in a Formula One car, and there's been a lot of speculation about what the future will hold for him in 2015. Will Fernando Alonso, who seems to be leaving Ferrari, be turning up in a McLaren Honda in 2015? I don't know, but what Jenson is definitely doing is saying, hey, I've still got it.
Let's find out more about these intermediate tyres that the guys are on, Jenny.
Yeah, Sutil Maldonado have just come in to the pit lane to change over. It looks like these tyres, the intermediates, lasting about 11 laps. Apparently the rear tyre's looking almost brand new, but the front left is the one that's critical, and that's the one that's forced people to start pitting now.
Yeah, Jenny, the reason being is that this is it's a figure of 8 circuit, but you've got such long right-hand bends, so that left front takes an absolute caning, especially in the first sector, going up through turns 1 and 2, and then in the big long right-hander before Dunlop, which was the scene of Daniel Ricciardo's double overtake on both Williams cars. And so it's not unexpected that that left front is going to be the one that wears out.
The gap at the front is down to just 0.7 seconds, Rosberg in front of Hamilton, and it's worth pointing out that Hamilton will have to do this all by himself. He won't get DRS in these wet conditions. They close the DRS flaps. You're not allowed to use them in these wet conditions because of safety concerns. So if Hamilton does want to get past Rosberg, he's got to do it au naturel, I suppose, as we see some great battles going on further down. Currently Marcus Ericsson is running in 15th place with Kamui Kobayashi just behind him. And Jenny, what news have you out?
Well, they are readying pit stops for people up and down. Kimi Raikkonen is going to be next in for Ferrari. He was in 9th place. He will pull up in front of me, the red car, and the number 7 on front of it, adorning it. So he pulls in, they put him up on his jacks. It's a slightly slower process than usual because of the wet weather, and a very slow getaway because they couldn't release him out. And I'm not sure what's going on here. You can hear it firing at full cylinders, and they've got it away now. But that was a very slow pit stop for Kimi Raikkonen.
Yeah, Jenny, it was the right front. They couldn't seem to get the right front nut back on, and so it was a slow one from Kimi Raikkonen. But just looking at some lap times here, Sebastian Vettel currently is about 1 second, and Daniel Ricciardo actually, about just over 1 second quicker than Jenson Button up ahead of them, or Rosberg and Hamilton, the 2 Mercedes drivers that are now fighting for the lead as they just dash below us. But with their number of laps to go, if Vettel keeps his pace up, he could be fighting for the lead of the race, but on the last lap.
And DRS has just been enabled. Race control have just come over and said that DRS is enabled. So we just mentioned that it wasn't enabled, and now that means that Lewis Hamilton will be able to open a little hole in his rear wing, which will cut his downforce in the straights when he's less than a second behind Nico Rosberg. So this could be a perfect moment really for that to happen to Hamilton, because he's now right up behind his Mercedes teammate, just half a second between them as they cross the line. Lap 25 out of 53 here, and we're going to get nose-to-nose racing once again between the Mercedes drivers, as we've had so many times this season, and now it's a real battle for the championship on the track, as we've seen so many times at Suzuka as well.
Yeah, this place has produced some crackers over the years. It's produced a lot of incidents though as well. Senna and Prost into the chicane the following year, down into turn 1. The two had collisions that decided the World Championships. I don't think these two are going to get into a collision. That was in Spa a few races ago, the last time that happened, and there was severe reprimands, slapped knuckles, and now they seem to be in much better and controlled shape than they were there.
Absolutely, very interesting battling then going on, and if Hamilton is able to get the DRS the next time they come down the start-finish straight, it could be very, very close indeed. Rosberg not particularly strong through Spoon, and Hamilton is going to be incredibly close once they get to the DRS zone. They're currently making their way beneath the trees, down the back straight that takes them towards the flat-out in dry conditions, left-hander at 130R. In these conditions, it's about 260 kilometres an hour through the left-hander, down into the final chicane, and now Hamilton is going to have the DRS when they come out onto the start-finish straight. It's the battle for the lead of the race. Rosberg leading at the moment. They come out over the start-finish line, and Rosberg gets a little bit of a twitch on as he tries to apply the power. The Japanese fans beneath us in the commentary box are really getting excited about this, because Hamilton has his DRS open. He's closing in on the way down into turn 1, but at the moment he's not close enough to make a manoeuvre. But now he's gone to the inside of turn 2, again not close enough. Rosberg just taking a slightly different line.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton is actually the one that's taking the different line, and he's now trying to force Rosberg a little bit wide, put him off his ideal positioning, which will then allow Hamilton maybe sniff of an opportunity. It is going to be hard for him to get the power down out of the last corner to be able to maximise all of the extra speed he gets by opening the drag reduction system. It's about 6-7 miles per hour, but in these conditions he can't get that power down, and so it's going to be tight.
So much oversteer.
That's Nico Rosberg still complaining about having oversteer in his Mercedes.
It's only going to get worse though, because the circuit's getting drier, and so therefore the drier it gets, the more that those rear tyres are going to heat up, and the more the oversteer balance is going to come into be a factor. Lewis Hamilton, by contrast, is running a little bit more over the wetter parts of the circuit, trying to cool his rear tyres. Rosberg doesn't have that liberty, because he's got to defend now, because Hamilton's right on him.
We are in a damp Japanese Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live. Allan McNish alongside myself, Jack Nicholls, in the commentary box. We've got Jennie Gow down in the pits, and we're on lap 26 of 53, and we've got a battle for the lead of the race. Nico Rosberg, the man second in the championship. He's 3 points behind his Mercedes teammate Lewis Hamilton, but Hamilton is 0.4 of a second behind him on the race circuit. We start to see the little vortices of air coming off the rear wings of the Mercedes as they drop down into the final corner, and again, this is going to be Hamilton's chance, because he will be able to open his drag reduction system and get more speed than Rosberg down the start-finish straight, but he's not as close this time around, Alan.
No, he's not. He kind of tried to climb the curbs to get a better line to come out to get the throttle down, but lost a little bit of grip as he was on those painted slippery surfaces, and Lewis Hamilton is gone off the circuit, gone wide. He got a big lock-up as he went into the first corner. The rear twitched as he went in, ran wide. He saved it. That's when he crashed in FP3 Saturday morning just before qualifying. Saved it in this occasion to fight another day, but that was a close one for Lewis Hamilton.
As you may have noticed from the sound I made, I thought he was in the gravel there for a moment. He came down towards the first corner. Talk us through it, Alan.
Yeah, just as he changed down, he locked up the rear, had to correct it, but he's on such a finite line that required him to run off the track onto the safety runoff area to be able to recover it, and so therefore that's something that will just give him a little bit of tentativeness when he does go into that corner the next time.
Absolutely, and that is what happened to him in the third free practice session, except then he couldn't get the car stopped in time. Jenny?
Well, that was hair-raising moments for us. We're just watching it as well, and you just thought this is all going to be like FP3 again, the two of them side by side. And just a reminder that these guys actually, for all the spats they've had, went out bowling together as a whole team yesterday, so they're obviously getting on a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely, but once the visors come down, the racing intensifies, and despite that mistake, Hamilton really hasn't lost much time. He's caught right up to the back of Nico Rosberg.
I think Rosberg had a little bit of traffic with one of the Marussias, Max Chilton, and that sort of allowed Hamilton to have another little bit of attack. He's in the same position as he was at the end of the last lap, just about half a second behind as he now comes through 130R, brakes hard into the final chicane, trying to line him up again. He cuts the curb more than Nico Rosberg, but this time he looks to have managed to get it and get the power down.
Out they come through the final corner and across the line. Hamilton can open his DRS now. As they come across the line, it's just half a second. So again, Lewis Hamilton not quite close enough to challenge the race leader on the run down into the first corner, but he is reeling Rosberg in. And how will that affect Rosberg's mental state when he sees his teammate go off, but then 5 corners later he's right on the back of him again? It's got to be really tough when you're leading a race like this.
Well, for the concentration, for the focus, you just want him to go away, but he's not there. He's going to be attacking all of the time, and so Nico Rosberg has got to be absolutely millimetre perfect. He's got to be correct and so gentle in the way he applies the power, and not to hit the brake too aggressively to have any lock-up or any mistake, and Hamilton will take advantage of that. But on the other way around, if Lewis Hamilton attacks a little bit too hard and makes a mistake, then he gifts Nico Rosberg potentially a victory.
At the culmination of this enthralling Japanese Grand Prix, we'll be going to Sports Week with Gary Richardson, and then we've got 2 Premier League football matches coming up later, as Lewis Hamilton is still right on the back of Nico Rosberg through the left-hand hairpin. It's Spurs versus Southampton at 2 o'clock, West Ham against QPR at 4:15 later on, but the Mercedes are absolutely nose to tail now as they come towards the spoon curve, and the atmosphere, Jenny, inside that Mercedes garage must be incredibly intense.
Palpable, that's for sure. Remember, these guys are going to have to come in, we think, relatively soon to pit stop. So this is going to be all important, track position and making sure you get a good pit stop and fastest as you can.
Yeah, but Jenny, I think that's the thing, the words you said there, track position. Lewis Hamilton will want to be the guy in front, because he will then, by that point, have the advantage. He can decide on when he wants to pit, and Nico Rosberg would be the one that would have to then take second best option. But now Hamilton's really attacking through the chicane.
He takes a much wider line into the second part of the chicane, which in theory should give him more drive out of the final corner. They're both really working the car very strongly. Only 0.3 of a second between them as they cross the line this time. Rosberg knows it. He covers the inside line. Hamilton looks to the outside at turn 1 and goes around the outside of his teammate and into the lead of the race. Lewis Hamilton, with a wonderful move, is now in front of Rosberg and leads the Japanese Grand Prix on lap 29 of 53.
I tell you what, that was a fantastic manoeuvre. He lined him up. Rosberg had to defend coming down the start and finish straight. Hamilton had been working that for the last 2 or 3 laps, trying to get the car over the curb to get the perfect acceleration. He did it on this occasion. Rosberg defended, and then he just decided to go round the outside. And already halfway round this lap, Hamilton looks to have checked out. He's pulled about 1 second on Nico Rosberg.
So it was superb work from Lewis Hamilton. Nico Rosberg immediately went defensive as he came out of the final corner. He was already working with the car. He knew how close Hamilton was, and he covered the sort of middle ground. Could Rosberg have done anything more?
Well, he could have defended maybe a little bit harder, moved across, but I don't think he expected Lewis Hamilton just to sail and even try to sail round the outside. Hamilton, though, was on a good line, and he had a good feel for where he needed to be. Now, this is a corner 2 laps ago that he did go off the track, but Lewis Hamilton was quite clear. He gave him one opportunity, and he was going to take it. But right now, he's taking advantage of the fact that Nico Rosberg seems to be struggling with the balance of his car. He's reported twice or thrice that he's had a lot of oversteer, and already he's dropping back.
So that means that Hamilton is in the lead of this race, which would extend his championship advantage to 10 points if it finished like this. But we've still got an awful long way to go. We're on lap 29 of 53 here in Japan. The crucial thing now, as we were just discussing before the move happened, Hamilton is in the lead, so he will get the choice of when he wants to come into the pits. He's now got a 2-second advantage over Nico Rosberg, having overtaken him on that lap as well. Daniel Kvyat has gone past Esteban Gutierrez and is now up into 9th position, meanwhile, in the Toro Rosso on the run down into the first corner, but that could be key for Hamilton. Jenson Button is running in 3rd position in the McLaren. Still a wonderful performance from him, and he's still holding off the Red Bulls, 8 seconds clear of Sebastian Vettel, who's now come into the pits. So Vettel is the first of our top 5 to pit for a fresh set of intermediate tyres. So Hamilton leads, Rosberg 2nd, Button 3rd, then it's Vettel and Ricciardo in 4th and 5th, Bottas, Massa, Hulkenberg, Gutierrez and Kvyat the top 10, with Perez, Raikkonen, Grosjean, Suttil, Magnussen, Verne, Maldonado, Ericsson, Bianchi, Kobayashi and Chilton completing our runners. We lost Fernando Alonso on the third lap of the race. John-Eric Verne currently running down in 16th place, the man overlooked for the Red Bull drive next season, and Jenny has some news from him.
Yes, he's having real problems. He's been in touch with the team a lot, saying that he doesn't know what's going on with the car, but it just doesn't feel right. The last time we got in touch with him, he said, guys, the car's a nightmare to drive. I don't know what to do. Jean-Eric Verne at Toro Rosso having none of the luck, and seeing out his final few races in F1 potentially in a bad way.
Well, somebody that's having quite a bit of luck up there in 9th place. Remember earlier on in the Grand Prix I said I spoke to the engineer from Sauber who said this could be a great opportunity for them. They've got Esteban Gutierrez in 10th position, giving them potentially a valuable point.
But maybe not, because Sergio Perez has just gone around the outside of him at the first corner, so Sergio Perez has just taken that 10th position away. But the fact that Sauber are battling for points is something they haven't really managed to do so far this season. Their best result of the season was in the first Grand Prix of the year in Australia, an 11th place finish. They managed that as well actually in Hungary. So it's really not been a great season for the Sauber team.
Well, to give you a bit of a summary now, lap 31 of 53, we've got Hamilton leading. Rosberg is second, now 4 seconds behind. He lost 2 seconds on that last lap. Jenson Button in a pretty lonely 3rd position, but 13 seconds back. Daniel Ricciardo in 4th place, 8.5 seconds behind Button. Then Sebastian Vettel, who's done his 2nd pit stop, in 5th. Valtteri Bottas in the Williams in 6th.
Back at 7 o'clock UK time here in Japan, we tried to get a race started, but it was started behind the safety car because of downpour conditions, because of the incoming typhoon Fanphone that's on its way to disrupt us here in Japan. So we had to be behind the safety car for 9 laps in the end. Then we got racing underway. Rosberg leading from Hamilton. Hamilton followed him all the way, and finally just a couple of laps ago went around the outside at the first corner to move up into the lead of the race, which is where he remains now. Jenson Button came into the pits very early on to change to the intermediate tyres, which are the less extreme of the two wet weather compounds, and that was a great manoeuvre from the McLaren driver. He's now running in 3rd position. The Red Bulls of Daniel Ricciardo and Sebastian Vettel are in 4th and 5th places at the moment, with then the two Williams cars of Valtteri Bottas and Felipe Massa in 6th and 7th positions. We're on lap 31 of 53. Crucially now, we're only 9 laps away from getting to lap 40, and once we get past lap 40, that means even if the rain comes and we have to stop the race, full points will be awarded. So that was a bit of a concern for the teams, but it looks okay at the moment, and it's looking very okay for our race leader Lewis Hamilton here on BBC Radio 5 Live. He's leading the way now, 4 seconds clear of his Mercedes teammate Nico Rosberg in 2nd position, and Hamilton is looking for 3 wins on the bounce for only the 2nd time in his Formula 1 career. The first one coming up at the start of this year when he won Malaysia, Bahrain, China and Spain back to back. So Hamilton performing very strongly. Jenson Button is back in the pits now, Jenny.
Yes, it's time for him to make his pit stop. He came in very early after the safety car came in, so the pit crew are out and waiting for him. Sebastian Vettel for Red Bull's already been in, so we know this is a tactic. Red Bull putting pressure on Jenson Button. They want Vettel in 3rd place. Jenson Button will be desperate for himself and McLaren to hold on to that spot, so he pulls into his pit box. He is so good at pit stops. The team lift him up. They have worked for hours on these stops. It's slightly slow on the front right. They change his visor and the car is not going. He's got it in and he's off, but that was slow. That's bad, and Vettel could jump him.
There was 8 seconds between Button and Vettel. We'll wait and see, and you're absolutely right, Jenny. Here comes Sebastian Vettel down the start finish straight, and Vettel is past Jenson Button and now up into a net 3rd position. He's just done the fastest lap of anyone in this race so far, and that's a real shame for Button and the McLaren team, because they were looking strong. Still maybe on to pick up their best, 2nd best result of the season so far. Had a podium back in Australia. They finished in 3rd place, did Jenson Button, with Kevin Magnussen, his teammate, finishing in 2nd position. But since then it's gone all a bit downhill for McLaren, and there's an awful lot of speculation going around as who will be their drivers next year. Some people saying Fernando Alonso. The one thing we do know is that Honda, who own this Suzuka circuit, will be supplying their engines. So It's going to be a very interesting 2015 for McLaren. Sebastian Vettel, meanwhile, is flying Allan McNish.
Yeah, he's just done the personal best sector and the best sector of anyone at the beginning of this lap, and that is on the back of the fact he did the fastest lap of the race so far. And Vettel is on a charge right now. He's done his second pit stop on lap 32 laps ago for his second set of intermediate tyres, and he's really pushing. So I'd expect Vettel to be able to go to the end. So we've got 20 laps to go now.
A move up the inside from Pastor Maldonado as he manages to get past Adrian Sutil in front of him. Those two doing battle down in 16th place. Maldonado in the Lotus going past Sutil in the Sauber. So that was a good move from Pastor, but still 17th position. And Lotus are another of those teams that really could have done with a race like today to manage to pick up some points. Adrian Sutil's other half is watching on in the garage, not looking particularly impressed with what she's just seen. But it's Hamilton leading the way here in Suzuka. Nico Rosberg in second place, now 5.5 seconds behind. Rosberg was complaining of oversteer, but is this just Hamilton being mega?
No, this is Nico Rosberg. If he's got oversteer, that's just going to multiply the drier the circuit gets. The balance will continue. So until Nico Rosberg can get to the pit stop for his next set of intermediate tyres, and they can do a front wing adjustment or a tyre pressure adjustment on the next set to try to get that balance back in, then he's just got to fight it, and he's just got to make the best out of it. The race certainly isn't over. Lewis Hamilton is 5.6 seconds up the road at the moment, but there's still 20 laps to go.
I wonder what is going on inside that Mercedes garage. Jenny.
Well, they have just taken the wheel guns out of their protective waterproof covers, so expect some action down here very soon. I will keep an eye on it. There we go. That tells us exactly what's happening. That was Rosberg's guys telling him to box.
Now that's very interesting if Rosberg is going to be the first man into the pits, isn't it, Alan?
Well, he's going backwards. He's got an imbalance in the car, and every lap that he's running around, he's about 0.8 to a second slower than Lewis Hamilton. So he's got to try to box at the earliest opportunity to try and get the car balance back so he can attack in the last part of the race.
It's 8:30 back in the UK. A very good morning to you as you join us for the Japanese Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live. Lewis Hamilton is leading the way, but his teammate Nico Rosberg has just come into the pits. It's Allan McNish alongside me, Jack Nicholls, and we've got Jennie Gow in the pits as Nico Rosberg makes his way towards Mercedes.
Yes, I have my beady eyes looking out for him as he comes into my vision. The green tail flap just passing me as he pulls into the pit box, which has been dried by the team. So he pulls up, the car is lifted into the air, the wheel guns fire on him, they turn the swivel to the side and the jack, and it's a slowish pit stop, but he's now back out, Jack.
Yeah, 3.8 seconds compared to the 2.6 we saw earlier on for Nico Rosberg, so that's not going to help him too much, but he's now out first on the intermediate tyres. It'll be interesting to see when Lewis Hamilton comes in. Following us here in Suzuka will be Gary Richardson with Sports Week, and then later on we've got 2 Premier League football commentaries as well, as Jenson Button sets the fastest lap time of anyone, and he's now on a new set of intermediates as well.
So therefore, from that point of view, if I was Lewis Hamilton, I would pit as soon as I could, because clearly a new set of tyres is worth quite a lot of lap time, and therefore it gives you a fantastic opportunity to try to make sure you keep your advantage over Nico Rosberg.
Kevin Magnussen has just done a quick 360 down at the first corner, and well, it looks like there might have been a bit of trouble at that pit stop. Jenny, what do you know?
Yes, I'm just looking on. There was certainly a delay. I'll try and find out from the team exactly what went on, but I just want to tell you that the pit machines have gone back undercover, so they're not bringing Lewis Hamilton in any time now.
Lewis Hamilton has just come over the radio to say that the tyres look okay for now, but what do his lap times look like? He's 4 seconds slower than Jenson Button, so surely it doesn't matter what the tyres feel like. If you're in the lead of the race, come in and get some new boots on.
Yeah, it's clearly something that you've got to consider. You know, at the end of the day, the driver's looking through his visor. He's got quite a narrow view, and that view is what his car is doing, and the people that visually he can see up in front of him, or maybe in the mirrors behind. He cannot see the whole global of the race. That's what the team have got, and so therefore he's feeding his information into the system, and then the engineers will pull it together.
Now, we've recently had some new rules from the FIA telling the teams what they can and can't talk to the drivers about. Is there any chance that the team want to explain to Lewis that the differences in times, but they're not able to? Is that something that perhaps would have happened in the past? Because it just, to me, seems curious that Hamilton's out there on a slower set of tyres, because surely he will have to pit before the end of the race.
Yes, he will have to pit before the end of the race in terms of performance, but also in terms of the way that the tyre is reacting. Right now he feels good, but what they'll do right now is see where Nico Rosberg is with his new set of tyres. However, I think you've just got to cover it off. You're in the lead, you're in the ascendancy. Cover off the possibility before it maybe could be too late.
Absolutely. The sound you can hear underneath us is Daniel Ricciardo, the Red Bull racer, who's currently now in second position. He's in front of Nico Rosberg because Rosberg has pitted.
Okay, Jensen, pick up is clear of Ricciardo. Pick up now, clear of Ricciardo. Pick up wet patches where you can.
So that's Jenson Button being told that he still needs to cool his tyres down a little bit because they are starting to overheat ever so slightly. Not too much of a drama at the moment, but it may progress, and Button is now right up behind, it's Sebastian Vettel that Jenson Button is right up behind for fourth position. So still a strong race for the McLaren driver as they turn out of Spoon Curve. And Jennie Gow is still down there at Mercedes.
Yeah, pit stop action is about to get underway, but a whole raft of them. Mercedes are readying for Hamilton, but they're also going to begin Ferrari of Kimi Räikkönen, which is directly in front of Hamilton's pit box. And one of the Lotuses coming in, which is one behind that. So Ricciardo comes into his pit box. He stops, and I can see Lewis Hamilton, the leader of this race. He is coming into his pit box. The team are ready for him, but are any of the other cars in here going to slow him down? The Lotus is back out again. Guys, you can see what's happening from Lewis Hamilton probably better than I can.
So Hamilton comes out of his pit box, he'll release the pit lane speed limiter, and he will hold on to the lead of the race because Nico Rosberg is just coming over the start-finish line now. Hamilton retains the lead despite staying out for an extra few laps, and maybe that's a view towards further on up the race. Maybe that means his tyres will last a little better later on. And meanwhile, it looks as though Jenson Button has just got past Sebastian Vettel to get through. So that's a good move from Jenson Button as they come around through the S's now. He is in front of Sebastian Vettel. Daniel Ricciardo, meanwhile, hasn't pitted.
Okay, Daniel, heavier rain in the pit lane, more rain in the pit lane.
And he's being told that there's going to be more rain in the pit lane, Daniel Ricciardo.
Well, now if you are on an intermediate, it's a used intermediate, the rubber, the depth of rubber on the grooves will have dropped down quite considerably, and it will not be as capable as it used to be to evacuate water. If there does become a downpour right now, those who have not pitted strategically could have an advantage, but tyre-wise could be in a very tricky area.
So it is Daniel Ricciardo who is now in front of everyone in this race, but he hasn't made his second pit stop yet. Jenson Button has not passed Sebastian Vettel. It was Ricciardo following Kevin Magnussen that we were watching, so my apologies there. It's still Vettel fourth and Button in fifth place in the McLaren. So the two Mercedes are now running in second and third. Hamilton ahead of Rosberg, but it's Ricciardo leading the way. The only way this could work out really well for Daniel Ricciardo is if the heavens opened, he bails in for full wet weather condition tyres and is on the right tyre, but it doesn't look like we're quite in that situation yet.
Yeah, but he's still 15.5 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton, who will be able to do exactly the same thing. The loser out of that would be Nico Rosberg, because he's 9 seconds behind Daniel Ricciardo at the moment. That was prior to that pit stop scenario.
So looked as though Ricciardo actually lost a bit of time, and Kevin Magnussen unlapped himself from Daniel Ricciardo, who is now making his way down the pit lane, and Ricciardo is coming in to put on a new set of boots, which will be the intermediate tyres, and that will presumably put him out around about Sebastian Vettel. That's going to be very interesting to see where he comes out compared to his teammates as Ricciardo exits the pit lane now. We'll wait and see exactly where Vettel and Button have gone past, so Daniel Ricciardo comes out in fifth position. So Hamilton is now back in the lead of the race that he never really lost. It was just a phase during the pit stops. So Hamilton leads, Rosberg second, third is Vettel, fourth is Button, fifth is Daniel Ricciardo, sixth and seventh for the two Williams of Bottas and Massa, Nico Hülkenberg in eighth, Daniel Kvyat ninth, 10th is Sergio Perez, as we are on lap 37 out of 53 here on BBC Radio 5 Live. Jenny.
Yeah, that rain is starting to come down. It's still fine, sort of spitty rain at the moment. Lots of people in these very tall grandstands facing me wearing their ponchos. A few umbrellas starting to pop up, and the people in the big wheel, the Ferris wheel to the left-hand side, probably not getting the greatest view because it's covered with rain.
Yeah, I don't think I would want to be up there if this tornado, this typhoon is on its way with 100-mile-an-hour winds, to be honest with you. I wouldn't want to be up there in the dry conditions, Jenny, but right now it's certainly not dry out on circuit, and if it is starting to drizzle, that suggests that 30-minute, 40-minute period that where we had a clean weather system has gone.
Absolutely, so it'll be very interesting to see how that weather develops. We are on lap 37 of 53, as I say, and that means that we're about to complete lap 37, which means we're only going to be 4 laps away from reaching the distance of full points. So it looks as though this is going to be a full points race. There were concerns right at the start that we'd only get 2 or 3 laps of racing and we'd have to award half points, but it looks like we're going to get a proper Grand Prix here.
15 minutes of rain, Checo. 15 minutes of rain.
Ooh. That's Sergio Perez, or Checo, to his chums, being told that there will be 15 minutes of rain coming up. So that'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Lewis Hamilton currently has a 7.3 second advantage over Nico Rosberg. Sebastian Vettel is running third even, with Button and Ricciardo in 4th and 5th.
Yeah, but Vettel is now only 7 seconds behind Nico Rosberg, and that last lap was nearly, it was 1.8 seconds faster than Rosberg was able to do, who admittedly did have quite a slow lap, but Sebastian Vettel in the Red Bull is eating into Nico Rosberg's position.
A few mistakes starting to come around the circuit. A little run wide from Kevin Magnussen at the first corner. Jean-Eric Vergne does exactly the same in the Toro Rosso, but they both managed to recover and live another day. Felipe Massa has come into the pits now from 7th position as he exits, but he wasn't really squabbling too hard with anyone at the moment. Williams, having qualified on the 2nd row of the grid, dropping back during the race. Daniel Ricciardo has set the fastest first sector of anyone now that he's on his new intermediate tyres. Massa comes out of the pits side by side with Sergio Perez, so that means he's come out around about 10th position, and that is Massa's second tyre stop. So and Perez has made his second tyre stop as well, so Massa has really lost out recently in these last couple of laps. But Daniel Ricciardo is the man flying in 5th position as Lewis Hamilton continues to lead the way here at Suzuka in the Japanese Grand Prix. We are on lap 39 now out of 53, and Hamilton has just set the fastest lap of the race so far. He is putting in a storming drive at the front of this race, and he is hoping to extend his championship lead to 10 points as we go into the last 4 Grand Prix of the season.
And on board with Sebastian Vettel as he now tries to eat more into the gap as he's just run wide, and Sebastian Vettel's actually gone off the circuit as he came up through the S's. He went wide straight through the gravel trap at the long right-hander, rejoins and then starts to go on up into Dunlop. So as he was attacking the gap he had to Rosberg, he's actually lost out as Vettel runs off the track.
And that means that Jenson Button in the McLaren is just 2 seconds behind the Red Bull of Vettel in 3rd place. Daniel Ricciardo just 1.8 seconds behind Button. So the 3rd, 4th and 5th place men are covered by just 3.8 seconds at the moment. So this will be a good little squabble to develop as Lewis Hamilton continues to pound around at the front of the field. Valtteri Bottas comes into the pits now for Williams to make another pit stop. We've already seen his teammate Felipe Massa coming in.
Yeah, it's been a pretty shocking day for Williams' team, considering where they started on the grid, considering the performance they had. Clearly they were the 2nd fastest car all weekend behind the Mercedes of Rosberg and Hamilton, and in the wet weather once again they seem not to be able to make it work, and this is an opportunity to extend their lead over the Ferrari. Seems to have gone.
Lewis Hamilton continues to lead the way, 8.5 seconds clear now of his Mercedes teammate Nico Rosberg. Jenny.
Yes, Lewis Hamilton's just been in touch with his team asking whether a back marker's touched him at all.
Turn 1, some cars are running wide.
It is raining more.
So we need to keep these tyres in as good a state as we can. This rain looks like it may build.
That's Lewis Hamilton having a conversation with his race engineer, being told, don't go off at turn 1 again, will you, Lewis? Because he's already done it twice so far this weekend, and crucially, that the rain may build. But also, you were saying concerns, Jenny, that he might have had contact out there.
Yes, he was just saying he was worried that he'd made contact with one of the back markers, so we'll keep a watching brief of this to see if there's any damage, but I'm sure the team would have notified him if there had been any.
Yeah, that was actually as he passed the Caterham on the run up to 130R. There was two backmarkers, one of them was a Caterham, and as he swung in he was very close to them, and so I think it's probably right there that he is talking about. But his lap time is a 1:51.600, which is the fastest lap of the race so far, so clearly it's not affecting the speed.
And 1.3 seconds quicker than his teammate. Wonderful performance from Lewis Hamilton. Despite the rain coming down harder, he is going faster. Meanwhile, Daniel Ricciardo is now caught right up to the back of Jenson Button in the McLaren. Button had a phenomenal start to this race. He pitted early to go onto intermediate tyres. It put him up in third place. A slower second pit stop means he lost out to Sebastian Vettel's Red Bull, who's now running in third, and the second Red Bull of Daniel Ricciardo, currently in fifth, is all over the back of the Englishman as they come now towards the left-hand hairpin here at Suzuka. The visibility getting more and more difficult. Daniel Ricciardo goes to the inside of the hairpin. Jenson Button saw him coming. He might try and get the cutback. He went wider at the apex of the corner and is now going to drive all the way around the outside and retake the position. Very wise driving there from Jenson Button.
Yeah, he saw that the move was on once Ricciardo had started up the inside, didn't defend it at all, just allowed Ricciardo to slide past him, missed the apex a little bit, and then that allowed Jenson Button to get on the throttle and retake the position as they accelerated out of the hairpin towards Spoon Corner.
But Daniel Ricciardo is not going to give up. We've seen him pull some excellent overtaking manoeuvres so far this season. Hungary in particular springs to mind around the outside at the second corner there in Hungary, and it's going to be very challenging for Jenson Button to hold off Daniel Ricciardo for the remainder of this race. Hamilton crosses the line to complete lap 40. We're now on lap 41 of 53, which means that it will be a full points race. We were concerned when this race started a good hour and 45 minutes ago that we'd have to award half points because we wouldn't get to the full 75% race distance, but we're now there. It'll be full points, no dramas. Hamilton leads, Rosberg second, Vettel third. It's Button and Ricciardo doing battle over fourth place at the moment, and because the rain is coming down more, DRS has been disabled, and Jenny, I presume that's because you're getting wetter.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Puddles starting to form again as I make my way through to the pit lane. But just to give you some news, Jenson Button had a very slow pit stop. I've just been to the team to try and find out why, and McLaren have told me they had to do another steering wheel change. They did one earlier for Kevin Magnussen. They had to do one for Jenson Button as well. He had a very limited electronics and telemetry.
Yeah, copy that, Lewis. That's what we're seeing. Seems like it's just getting heavy. Okay, Lewis, you're still the fastest man out there, so just keep it on the black stuff.
So that's Lewis Hamilton telling his team the rain is getting heavier, as Jenny told us, and he's been told you're still going fast out there, almost unnecessarily fast, so make sure you keep it on the black stuff, i.e. the tarmac, as Daniel Ricciardo and Jenson Button still do battle over fourth position. We've seen how difficult is it when you're into a groove, Allan McNish, alongside me, former F1 driver and Le Mans race winner. When you're in the groove and you're going as fast as you can, how easy is it to dial it back?
Well, the thing is, Lewis Hamilton is significantly quicker than Nico Rosberg. I think is still struggling with the balance issues that he had with the rear of the car's a little bit unstable. But from that point of view, at this moment in time, he's got to stay in the groove, because for him, he's just driving as he feels is correct for these conditions.
Jenny.
It's pit stop time again. The rain coming down heavily enough for Pastor Maldonado and his Lotus to come in and swap onto full wet tyres. One of the McLarens, it's Kevin Magnussen. He's also come in. He's on full wets. They're gambling. If this is the right move for them, they could get themselves some extra places. And I think the other Lotus is just about to come in as well onto full wets.
OK, so Maldonado in, Magnussen in, both switching from intermediate to wet weather tyres, and we are now on lap 42 out of 53, so only 10 laps or so to go. It is getting darker out there. The sun is due to set in about half an hour, so with 10 laps to go, we probably should be all right, actually, to get this race fully completed before the darkness descends on the Suzuka paddock here. The light is going down, and obviously the cloud cover, because of this typhoon that's on its way, means that it'll get darker a little bit quicker. Meanwhile, Jenson Button in fourth place in the McLaren is still having to work so hard with Daniel Ricciardo right up behind him, and it'll be interesting now to see, because Kevin Magnussen, Jenson Button's McLaren teammate, who's just gone onto the full wet weather tyres, is behind these two. He's further back in the field, but on the circuit he's right with them as Daniel Ricciardo looks to the inside of the hairpin and goes through now, and he beautifully blocks off Jenson Button halfway through the manoeuvre, meaning that he wasn't able to get back at him the way he did a lap ago, and now I'm expecting to see Button move aside to let his teammate Magnussen through, because he's further down the order and on full wet weather tyres, which is exactly, not quite what happens. I thought that was what was happening, but then they almost came together at Spoon Curve, the two McLaren drivers, but they continue on their way. So Daniel Ricciardo, and off is Adrian Sutil into the tyre barriers. He was on the intermediate tyres, and this is coming up through the S's, I think.
Yeah, that's coming up through the S's, and he's spun round backwards, and then it's looped forwards, and he's gone nose into the tyre barrier. I think that's a Dunlop, the long left-hander in about 5th gear, 140 miles per hour.
And Jenny is down in the pits with Jonathan Neal.
I certainly am. He's one of the big bosses at McLaren. A very tense race for you. You've had steering wheel changes on both Jenson Button and Kevin Magnussen's car.
Jenny, you've got a McLaren coming into the pit lane. It's Button.
Oh, Button's just coming into the pit lane right now. This race is a pretty tough one for you guys to call, isn't it?
Well, it's pretty tough for everybody. Changeable conditions like this, where it went from extreme wet to inters, then a dry period, and now back to wet again, is always lively, which is why it's so exciting. Kevin's steering wheel, we had to change at the first stop. We got a lot of water into it, but intermittent radio, and then we started to get a lot of electrical switch, uncommanded instructions, and we could see a similar thing happening on Jenson. So when he came in for the stop, we changed that as a precaution. Kevin hasn't had any problems since that, but it has been relatively dry since then.
All right, fingers crossed. I'll let you get back to it. Thank you very much.
So Jenson Button has come out onto the full wet weather tyres, just as his teammate Kevin Magnussen did, and just as Button did earlier on in the race. He's the first man to make the switch on, or one of the first men anyway, to make the switch onto the perhaps appropriate tyres. As he comes out of the pits, it's now going to be interesting to see what his lap times can provide. But it's still Lewis Hamilton leading the way. We're on lap 43 of 53 here in Suzuka. Nico Rosberg is running in second place, 12.5 seconds behind his Mercedes teammate. Sebastian Vettel is running third. Jenson Button was in fourth, but he's just come into the pits, so Daniel Ricciardo is now up into fourth place. Max Chilton, meanwhile, is running down in 19th position. Spurs versus Southampton later on at 2 o'clock on BBC Radio 5 Live. West Ham versus QPR as well at 4:15, and Sports Week with Gary Richardson follows us here in Suzuka. So, frantic action throughout this race. We've got 10 laps to go now, and Hamilton is 14 seconds clear of Nico Rosberg and still lapping a second and a half quicker every lap than his Mercedes teammate.
Yeah, Sebastian Vettel is there in third place, and then Daniel Ricciardo in fourth in the Red Bull. Then Jenson Button, who's just made his fourth stop of this race, going onto the full wet tyre.
And the safety car has been deployed. I suddenly thought I saw Lewis Hamilton slowing, but I think that's because the safety car has come out, and that means that the cars will have to drive to a lap time delta, and that is not good news for Lewis Hamilton, because that 14-second advantage means it'll be taken away by the safety car. But now that we're past the 75% race distance, it means that they might cut short this race. We'll wait and see.
The safety car is because that the medical car has gone out onto track, and the medical car is the one that's speeding, I presume, to the scene of Adrian Sutil's incident. But that means that the others are now able to come in and do their pit stops. So now the teams, Jenny, are starting to prepare for a mass of pit stops.
So this is going to be very interesting for Jenson Button, because he has come into the pits onto the full wet weather tyres. He won't have to pit now. Will this put Jenson Button out in the lead of the race? We'll have to wait and see. Hamilton and Rosberg potentially will come in. The Mercedes team are certainly out in the pit lane. Jenny.
Yes, all the teams getting out, preparing themselves. This is where a double pit stop strategy might come in as well. So they bring one car in, followed by the next car. The car with track position is normally the one that gets their say on what happens. So the first car in is Hulkenberg for Force India. He goes and puts on another set of the intermediate tyres, so the green banded tyres. He is back out again, a pretty good 2.9, I think it was, pit stop for them. So the rain is starting to come down more heavily, and with the safety car out, my only fear is that we might not resume this race again. That is because the medical car is out. It's on the scene, I think, of the Sauber Sutil at the moment. So that will remain in place until that's the actual doctor's car has come back in.
Yep, absolutely. So any news on the incident there? Adrian Sutil is out of his car. He's out of his Sauber that hit the wall at not a particularly high speed, but the doctor's car has gone out there.
I have to say, Jack, that's a pretty quick corner if you go off backwards, and then when the car turned round and it sort of hit at pretty much head-on angle, and so from that point of view, maybe not the most violent accident that you will see, but it can pretty easily hurt the driver.
So Red Bull are getting ready in the pits, as are Mercedes, but Mercedes are now going back into their garage, so doesn't look like Mercedes are ready for a pit stop quite yet. Sebastian Vettel is. In he comes. He's going to go from intermediates to intermediates by the looks of things. Yes, it's the green-walled tyres that go on the side of Sebastian Vettel's car. Visibility does seem to be getting worse here at Suzuka. We're past the 75% race distance, so there's a chance that we might have a red flag potentially, but we'll wait and see. Hopefully we can get racing back underway. Everyone keen to complete the race here in Japan. That has been an eventful one, there's no doubt about that. We've got 7 minutes until 9 o'clock. Not 100% sure if we'll be going straight to Sports Week at 9, but it will follow the end of the Grand Prix here in Japan. Lewis Hamilton continuing to lead the way, and soon the safety car will pick him up and Nico Rosberg will slot in behind him. But the interesting thing will be whether they come into the pits, because we saw that Mercedes were getting ready in the pit lane, but they brought the tyres out, but then had to go back into the pits. So it's an interesting decision and an interesting tactical situation at play for Mercedes.
For me, the very interesting thing is Jenson Button versus Sebastian Vettel. Jenson Button went to the heavy, wet tyre, the one that will evacuate the most water, because they clearly think there is going to be more rain, whereas Vettel went to the intermediates. Because of this safety car, they will effectively line up just one behind each other, and then you will see who made the right choice, whether it is Button, the wily fox that tends to have a feel for these things, or whether it'll be Sebastian Vettel, who is coming to the end of his Red Bull career this year.
Jenson Button won the Hungarian Grand Prix in 2006, his first Grand Prix victory in treacherous conditions, but the decision for Mercedes is going to be interesting. So Hamilton comes across the line, Rosberg is in second place. Who is going to come across the line in third place? That's going to be the thing we've got to wait and find out about, as the cars are all at different points on the circuit. It looks as though it will be Vettel in third position, coming around the final corner now, and no, that's Ricciardo. So Ricciardo comes across the line in third.
Here's Sebastian Vettel coming through, because he had that extra pit stop prior to Sebastian Vettel now crosses behind us. But we are under safety car conditions, so the train is basically catching up right now at this moment in time. Then there's two back markers, there's a Lotus and then a Caterham, and then we've got Jenson Button behind that. So within about a lap's time it will be one long train. Right now it's just trying to bunch the field up.
And so Button and Vettel are the two men who have done 4 stops. Hamilton and Rosberg are still out there, having only made 3 stops. Well, 2 tyre stops and the one trip into the pits for the red flag. So Mercedes deciding to stay out there, Jenny, and that's an interesting call from them.
Yeah, I think it's a very good call as well, because they don't need really to carry on racing. This safety car will be out for some time, we think, so they might as well just sit there behind it, and their tyres aren't going to go off massively, so they can afford to make that gamble. Just want to bring you an update. It seems that the Sittel spin was something to do with Bianchi as well from Marussia, so I think a trip to the stewards will be rewarded for both of those incidents. But we're trying to find out at the moment the state of Adrian Sutil and his health. The ambulance is on track at turn 15, and that message is being relayed to all of the teams, and the safety car driver is well aware of that as well.
Okay, so not the best of news here with lap 46 of 53 here at the Japanese Grand Prix. It's Lewis Hamilton continuing to lead the way. We'll keep you up to date with any developments in that situation, and it looks as though one of the Force Indias has pulled to the side, and it is Nico Hülkenberg who was making his way out of the pits, having just made his pit stop, and the red flag has been shown here in Suzuka on lap 46 out of 53, and I can't imagine that the race is going to restart. So that means that Lewis Hamilton is going to win the Grand Prix, most likely. We'll have to wait for confirmation for the whether the race gets restarted or not. The cars are being sent into the pit lane. Normally they would get sent onto the grid, and the cars are now making their way into the pit lane, Alan.
Yeah, we've got Hamilton, who's in front of Rosberg. Daniel Ricciardo, courtesy of staying out on the track and not making a pit stop, comes up into third. Sebastian Vettel in fourth. Jenson Button in fifth. Then Bottas in the Williams with his teammate in sixth and seventh. Hulkenberg is down to eighth. And Jenny.
Yes, and just at the medical centre, the Marussia team have made their way, or some of the members of the Marussia team, including Jules Bianchi's trainer, have made their way to the medical centre. I can't get any more details from the team, but I will update you. This is to do with the incident with Sutil and Jules Bianchi.
That's unfortunate. I didn't realise there was no vision on any of the cameras or where we could see from our position. It's just actually out of sight. We can see the corner, but not that point. And so we clearly hope that Jules Bianchi is well and fit, because in 7 days' time we've got the first ever Russian Grand Prix in Sochi.
So we are uncertain at the moment as to whether Bianchi and Sutil have been involved in the same incident or separate incidents, but Jennie Gow, our pit lane reporter on BBC Radio 5 Live Formula 1, will keep us up to date with that. But the red flag has been shown here at Suzuka, and the cars are now making their way into the pits. The second red flag of the race so far. We're on lap 47 out of 53, and that means that we have gone past 75% race distance, which means if the race were to completely stop now, then everyone would be awarded full points, and Lewis Hamilton would have a 10-point advantage at the top of the championship. But we were saying what ifs all the way back on lap 3 of the race as well, so it's going to be worth waiting to get official confirmation on exactly what is going to happen as regards to the restart of this race. There's 23 minutes and 31 seconds remaining on the clock, and we're on lap 47 of 53 on the circuit, so we will keep an eye out on that. We will be going to Sports Week with Gary Richardson at the conclusion of this Grand Prix, which won't be too much longer, so don't worry about that. Later on BBC Radio 5 Live, we've got 2 Premier League commentaries. White Hart Lane for Tottenham versus Southampton at 2 o'clock, and then down to Upton Park for West Ham versus QPR at 4:15. And you can also get all the latest reaction to the incidents this weekend in Suzuka, all the big news and the race circuit as well, on the BBC 5 Live Checkered Flag podcast, which will be coming out later on.
All the drivers still sitting in the pit lane. Lewis Hamilton at the front of the queue behind the safety car, having his visors cleaned. This is all precautionary situation, just in case this race will restart. There is only 6 laps to go. Personally, I think with the dark coming in, then the chances of that are limited. What do you think, Jen?
I actually want to bring you some more news, if you don't mind me interrupting you, sorry. The medical team are taking particular attention from this. From what I believe, and this isn't confirmed from the team or anything, but what I'm hearing is that the Bianchi car went into the crash site of the Sutil accident. So I'm waiting to hear more, but the team from Marussia are very concerned at the moment. They're walking around. We're trying to find out more details for you. I don't want to be alarmist. I don't want to raise concerns over what I can, but there are a lot of people there making their way, including Adrian Sutil's girlfriend, back to the track.
Well, we have just heard the news that the race will not be restarted. All cars to Parc Fermé, which means that essentially Lewis Hamilton has won the Japanese Grand Prix, finishing ahead of his teammate Nico Rosberg, which means that the gap at the top of the championship will be up to 10 points. Daniel Ricciardo finishes in 3rd place, Vettel 4th, Button 5th, Bottas 6th, Massa, Verne, Hulkenberg and Perez completing the top 10 here in Japan. But as we've heard from Jennie Gow, some concerning reports coming. We'll bring you everything as soon as we know it here at the Japanese Grand Prix, which started in treacherous conditions almost exactly 2 hours ago now at 7 o'clock UK time, and we had troubles trying to get the race underway, and we eventually managed to get it underway as the rain stopped with the arrival of Typhoon Fanfone on its way, which could disrupt travel plans going forward to the Russian Grand Prix, the first ever Russian Grand Prix, which is taking place next week at the Sochi Autodrome, around the venue of